Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Northeast Scene Podcast. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
And today we've got a special guest, a South Jersey legend, Mr. Intuit Over It himself, Evan Weiss.
Hey, oh man. You know what? My favorite part about this podcast so far is hearing the Philadelphia accent so deeply. I love it and I missed it so much. And it comes out, I feel like I somewhat lost it when I moved here. Yeah. And whenever I'm home, it's just like immediately returns. You know, like I get around my dad and like some of my old friends like from growing up and it just pops right back out. So hopefully if you're listening at home, you can recognize the point during this podcast in which I switch back to my South Jersey Philly accent.
It's going to creep out. It happens to me too. Now I have to ask you, do you hear it in me too? Because Tommy has it. He definitely has it, but I feel like I've lost a bit of it moving up to here to New York.
I gotta say, Keith, it's still totally there, and the only reason I can hear it is like so clearly is just because I've been so away from it for so long. So like now, when I ever hear like the slight, did you ever guys watch the Kroll show?
Oh yeah. I've seen that bit. Yeah.
That's like I try to explain the Jersey accent or the Philly accent to friends out here, and they just don't get it, and so I have to show them Pennsylvania in order for them to understand exactly what like the different regional dialects are between like New York, Philadelphia, New Jersey, South Jersey, and then Baltimore specifically, because they're so particular and specific.
Oh, yeah. And I always just ask people to say, "Can you say the word home?" Like HOME, and they go, "Yeah." Like my mother says it. My mother grew up in Logan in North Philly, so like my mother will say things like, "You's going home now?" And I'm like, "Oh boy, is that how we sound?" Christ.
And the recurring joke on this podcast, we discovered that we say member instead of remember.
Oh, remember that? Remember that?
Remember that?
Remember that guy? Remember that guy that used to come around?
But Evan, now this is a good opportunity to debut. We've figured out what we're going to call the listeners of the podcast.
What is that?
Members. That's right, folks. If you are a listener of the Northeast Scene Podcast, you are a member. That's it.
Then years down the line, members. You know, just like I love it.
So, Evan, tell us how your life is right now. You know, there's so much crazy shit going on in the world. We've got COVID, we've got protests, we've got police brutality. It's just one thing after another. We had murder hornets, but they seem to have fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, they kind of like they wrote the murder hornets out of the series finale. I've been kind of me and some friends have been. This obviously isn't meant to like downplay the reality of what's happening in the world right now.
Right.
But, kind of like a stark joke that me and some friends had made is that it feels like the United States is in the series finale. And, and so someone needs to reboot the show, come in and be like a new director for the program. Because it seems like it's on its way out. We're about to get canceled as a country.
Yeah. It feels like that. They're just throwing everything at us.
Yeah, so the Murder Hornets kind of felt like wow, this really is like they're trying to resolve every storyline they can right now, aren't they? But all told, I live in Logan Square, Chicago now. It's like right kind of in the one of the western neighborhoods. It's in the city of Chicago, but it's like just a little farther west of like the downtown area, and I've been living in the same apartment since 2012. My girlfriend and I live here together. We're both employed, thankfully, very grateful for that. And, we've had jobs where we've been working from home this entire time. And it's just been, doing what we can to give back to our local community and supporting local businesses and, out there, protesting and drive a 15 passenger van as a car. So like, coming up with ways to help people get home or help transport stuff or, just kind of doing what we can to support our local economy and our local collaborative community of people that live around here, which, Chicago's been really good to me since I've lived here. I've lived here since 2008. Mm-hmm. And so it's been really, really good to me here. And I've really, in the last few years, especially kind of found my footing, spending more time in the city and, got a career here that I was happy with. I'd kind of needed some time away from being a full-time musician and it was really helpful to kind of make peace with that and, enjoy living in the city again.
So what is that career?
So I actually do business development for the website reverb.com.
Okay.
So Reverb is a gear focused marketplace website. So if you're looking to
Yes.
buy a new guitar or buy a vintage guitar or sell something that you own, it's person to person transaction basically. So you could go
Yeah,
and
it's a great site. I've purchased pedals through it before.
yeah, awesome. That rules. Yeah, so I've been working there for about 3 years, and and I've been doing business development and partnership stuff and supplier relations, like relationships with different brands for probably the last 2.5 of that. So,
So how do you feel working the full-time job now as compared to just doing music full-time before? Is there one that you prefer?
I actually prefer. I've always felt. I feel like there's 4 big parts of being a musician if you're going to be a full-time musician, and it's writing, recording, practicing, and touring. Those are like the four big things, or like performance, And so for me, in the order of favorite to least favorite, it goes recording, writing, performance, practicing.
Yeah.
And so, and when you're a musician and when you're a full-time musician, it can really fuck with your headspace. Can I say fuck on this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It could really fuck with your headspace about what you're doing and why, because you'll make some decisions that are probably pretty questionable, or you'll say yes to certain things that you maybe normally wouldn't say yes to because you need to pay your rent and you need to support the project, and you need to you're always thinking about where's the next dollar coming from? Where's the next opportunity coming from? Sometimes, really stupid shit that I've done has also led to some really great opportunities. So it's like, you never know which one is going to be like super beneficial in the end or not. But like, you can also, go against some of your personal morals and ethics for the sake of paying your rent. Right. So like for me, I'd always, Into It Over started as a studio project. I'd never really been in any full-time bands prior to that existing. Like even the bands that I was in, back when I lived in New Jersey, Philadelphia, were still mostly casual. Like they weren't really full-time bands. Like people had jobs and partners and stuff like that. And they weren't really ready to, commit to the road full-time. And so I'm really digging now the balance of having a professional career that I appreciate, that I really like, and I like the work, as well as being able to create and work on, art projects and record records, write music, and not have to be so concerned about taking that as like a full-time priority, like not having to go super, balls to the wall with it, or like commit myself more than my mental capacity could stand. So my mental health is so much better. My physical health is so much better. And I'm not the same person I was in my 20s, which, for better or for worse. But, I guess that's, like fucking what Blink-182 said it so great, right? Like, I guess this is growing up, right? That's the...
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've always done the music life / work life balance. I've always worked full-time jobs. Sometimes I regret, I'm like, I should have focused more on music and I should have tried to do that full-time. But I mean, the past is the past, but now being in a band is a pain in the ass. I tried to get one together a couple years ago. We managed to get the EP out, but it's very, very, very difficult. And at least my patience for certain things decreased as I got older. So the fact that we have this podcast now is great because I can do it from home. I get to connect with all the artists I love. It keeps me really busy. It's super fun to do. And I can do it around my regular job. So it's the perfect balance right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to discredit the stuff that I've done either. Like I've created memories from years of going at it full time that I will never forget. And they're like, I'm so glad I did it. I can say that I went and I did it and I pursued it with everything I had. And, I'm just, the excitement of that grind had worn out for me. And I think if you push beyond when the joy fades, you'll begin to push into resentment for what you're doing in the first place. Which,
yes,
and then that passion the passion fades immediately.
Like and then you hate it, and I never wanted to hate it. I just wanted to I wanted, if it was going to suck, or if it was going to make me feel a certain way, or drain the life out of me, or make me feel sad, I just needed to take a break. And thankfully, I took a break starting around 2017, and the beginning, it was actually like just after Trump won the election. That's when I got my job. So I started taking a break right around then. And, now I'm at the point where I'm ready to begin to reinsert myself into focusing on personal music projects while not having to do it 11 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Or I could do like, I mean, you know what? I've confessed this to a few people. I'll confess it here too, is that I'm actually somewhat relieved that there isn't a touring economy right now.
Yes.
Which seems such like a weird thing to say, because I'm not relieved for my friends who are like actually trying to really, who are wanting to be on the road and have lost tours and have lost income. Like that fucking is awful.
Yes.
For me personally, and I'm only speaking for myself, like the fact that I don't have to worry about performance right now and I can focus on creativity and the things that I really love about being in a band, that's selfishly, is like, well, shit, cool. Like I'd love to come up with more creative ways to promote records and talk about them. Like that to me seems more fun and fulfilling just for where I'm at in my career.
Yeah, for me personally as well, it's been a bit of a relief because I just have a lot of anxiety in general. So for all social interaction, most social interaction to be taken off the table. Like I live in an apartment by myself in Williamsburg, and then I'm at my girlfriend's place on the weekends, and there's little things here and there, but that's it. All I got to do is that, and all I got to do is this, and all I got to do is go to work. So a lot of social visits and vacations and all this stuff has been taken off the table for now. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna enjoy the reduced schedule for now.
Right. You know what I mean? I wish so desperately that, like the earth feels like we mentioned earlier at the beginning of this podcast, it's like the series finale. It's like a dumpster fire, and it's it's just, so desperately wish I could blink and things would go back to normal. Like we would just wake up from this like nightmare that we're in. And, and I'll still be very motivated to create positive change for the country, this is more me referencing COVID specifically than anything else. But yeah, we're getting into a dark tangent. I don't know if we want to keep going.
Before I shift, I'll say this. I hope the pendulum swings back the other way and we start to see some more brightness, because just in general, people seem to really be struggling. Even a lot of people in my life, it's just like every day someone is messaging me with something going on, and my heart just feels really heavy, because I think people in general everywhere are really, really struggling. And I would like to see some relief for everyone. And it's gotta swing back the other way. So I'm anticipating that.
Here's to hoping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Evan, now doing this podcast, we focused on our scene in Bucks County and Philadelphia and surrounding areas, but I was so unfamiliar with those surrounding areas. Like New Jersey may as well have been another country. I did not go to many shows there. I did not know many people there unless they came over to Bucks and Philly to be in bands and stuff. So I wasn't even aware of you for a while, but I'll get to that. So tell us about growing up, where you grew up in Jersey, and kind of your entrance into the scene.
So I grew up in a town called Cherry Hill. So if you're in Philadelphia and you cross the Ben Franklin Bridge into New Jersey, you go right through Camden, and then you're right in Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill is like pretty much the next town over. It's you take Route 70. This is like the Jerseyest, most fucking shit ever. You go through Route 70. If we want to make it more Jersey, you pass, I think, 3 to 5 Wawas, and you get to Cherry Hill. And so, I grew up in Cherry Hill. It was very easy for me to get into Philadelphia. We had a train called the Patco train, which takes you right into downtown. Like, I think like the last stop was like 1516 Locust. But or 1819 actually. It's like right by Rittenhouse Square. But so my introduction to the scene actually was somewhat through Bucks County, because we had a church kind of near where I had grown up. And when I was in middle school, so like 7th grade, This would have been 1997 or 98.
Mm-hmm.
97, I think. So at this point, I'd already been in a band. The band that became The Progress had already existed. And we were called JAR, which was, we were named after the Green Day song of same name.
Yes.
And we'd started the band in the 5th grade, and we were like learning how to play our instruments together. And, eventually when we got to high school, we changed the name, and that's when we put out the first record. But there was a church in my town, and it was called the Ashland Church. And so the Ashland Church was this place that it was basically like they'd have an all ages night every single Friday, and they'd have bands play, and they'd either be local bands or touring bands or just general weird art stuff, like just kind of whatever they could book or put together. And it was free. And so you'd go and you'd watch a couple bands, and then the pastor, who was like this cool, like hip youth pastor, would come up on stage and he'd give you like a little spiel about how God was cool. And then another couple bands would play. And so my friend Doug Tate was his name.
Mm-hmm.
Doug knew that me and a couple friends were into like counterculture. Like I was really into grunge, and I like knew who Sunny Day Real Estate was, and like I like basically found out Sub Pop, and then was like, I got to hear every Sub Pop band ever. And so it's like this little kid, and Doug's like, yo, like we're doing shows at my church. Like, do you want to come to our church? It's every Friday. It's free. Like, I'll be there, and like it's really cool. Like you should come check it out. It's like, okay, cool. So my dad drops me off, and the very first show that I wound up seeing at this church was Nora and This Day Forward.
Wow. Yeah. That
man.
flyer either was posted on our site or will be. It's in like the backlog of things to post. Wow. Yeah. So okay.
So I go to this show, and This Day Forward plays, and and this was like early This Day Forward. Like this is like the demo,
Yes.
And so they play, and I'm like, this is the coolest fucking thing I have ever seen. Like watching them play, and that As One Records had their like little distro table set up, and
Keith Nolan.
I bought the This Day Forward tape, and then I bought the which I don't know where that is now. It probably got lost in the fucking move, but I got the This Day Forward tape. I got this band Trading Places was the other band, which was a Jersey, like actually a Cherry Hill hardcore band, who the drummer for that band was Jared Shavelson, who's the drummer in Paint It Black, and he also drums for like fucking Seal. He's like, but he was the drummer of that band. So I got the This Day Forward demo, the Trading Places demo, the Nora split with Dillinger Escape Plan, and the Samsara cassette. Do you remember what the Samsara cassette was?
No.
So Samsara was like the prog rock, like fucking. They had a female singer, and it was like super like new agey prog shit that fucking Chris Penne and Ben from Dillinger Escape Plan were in.
Oh, wow.
And so but it like doesn't sound, it's like not heavy at all. It's like I should fucking rip MP3s of this cassette, because I've never been able to find anything on the internet about it since. And I'll send you a photo of it after this podcast is done, so you can take a look at this thing. It's the tape's called Watercolor Rain. It's so ridiculous.
We gotta rip that and get it up on the site.
Oh yeah,
dude, for real,
for sure.
It's wild ass. But so I see the show, and I was just like, to Doug at the end of the night, I was like, I'm coming to these every Friday. Like,
yeah,
I don't care who's playing. And so every single Friday, we just went to the Ashland Church basically until. And there were a lot of South Jersey local bands that we kind of followed after that, because like JR wanted to get in with all these bands and start playing shows. So there was like this band called Coaside. There was a band called Gene Pool, which kind of sounded like Nirvana a little bit. The band that really kind of like changed how we looked at our local scene to me was Up Up Down Down Left Right BA Start.
Yes, they are excellent. Yeah, an old coworker turned me on to them, and yeah, they were awesome.
So that was the band that kind of like changed our perception of what like local music was, and it wasn't just because of them, because we loved the band, but also because Steve ran a studio, and so it was like, oh shit, like we can go record it with Steve, like, and so everything. Once we got hip to that, every band I was ever in until I moved to Chicago recorded at any number of Gradwell studios that existed. There were like 3 different locations, and I managed to record in all of them. but yeah, that was kind of the intro. And then once we got older, dude, there at that point, we'd already kind of discovered who these bands were. And then like you're in high school, and so you're sharing all this cool shit with your friends. You're like, oh, I saw this band, you got to hear this tape. And so you play the tape, and then you find out that like, you know, the big one was we found out This Day Forward was releasing. They put out Transient Effects of Light and Water. So we were like, okay, we got to go to the record release show for that. The record release show for that was at the Kill Time. And, and we had to get my parents to drop me off at the Kill Time.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, how did they react to that? Because if my parents would have dropped me off there, they would have been like, no way. Like
That's, I think they initially drove up, and because it was right by the New Angle Lounge too. So there was like some wild shit happening right by the New Angle Lounge. And, you know, so like, you know, they see that happening, and we get out of the car, and thankfully it was like me, my buddy Mike, who sang in the Progress with me, our other buddy Mike, who was in Funeral Bird with me, and I think our friend Will, who was just like a dude. And so thankfully we were like in a crew, but yeah, it was like Pray for Rain, This Day Forward, Poison the Well,
As We Grow.
I played bass in As We Grow. So did you know that?
No,
I did not know that.
Yeah. So when the last demo came out, the 3-song demo, when Nick took over singing duties from Sam, I played bass for, I think I joined playing bass. We played like 2 or 3 shows, and then Bob quit to join A Life Once Lost.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so I got to play, like I did the demo release show with the 3-song last demo, and it was at like some South Jersey VFW. I don't even remember now. And if you have it, it has like this like blood splatter paint on it. And that was actually me who'd painted those in my driveway. So
nice. Yeah, basically my only basis for New Jersey bands at that time was As We Grow. Like that was it.
There was like a lost demo that they had that Sam sang on, or that he hadn't sang on yet. It may have just been like instrumentals that were like needing Sam's vocals on them. And there was a song called like Snow Falling on Cedars, and there was like 2 or 3 other songs. And I used to have the MP3s for those, and I don't have them anymore. And that to me was like my favorite era of As We Grow. It was actually the era before I was in the band. Sam's last show was at this place called the Gibson House, which was a golf course rec center. It was like a rec center attached to a golf course. And it was in Marlton, New Jersey. And they were one of my favorite heavy local bands. But yeah, that was basically my exposure. I mean, once my parents were cool with us, like, to be fair, I had some really, I have some really awesome parents. They met playing in bands. They were very familiar with like the kind of being in a band attitude, and like the, you know, going to shows and supporting local art. And so for them, me and my friends who were straight edge, you know, being like, we want to go to the punk show, you know, like, or the hardcore show or whatever. They were like so relieved that was what we were doing, instead of like going to, you know, the drug party or like somebody's fucking weird basement or something. But then little did they know just like how unbelievably like violent and wild some of those shows would get. We're like,
especially back then.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
It was crazy.
Hardcore in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like I feel like no young kids will quite know exactly how gnarly it could get.
Yeah, because I go to a show now at St. Vitus, and I'm like, I feel like I could act like a tough guy if I wanted to now here.
Oh yeah.
But like back then at Palanca Park and Stalag and Kill Time, I was like, I'm just gonna stand in the back and try not to get killed.
Yeah, what was the show? What was the show where the dude swung from the chandelier? Was that the A Life Once Lost show?
That was yeah, Palanca Park.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that was. It wasn't during A Life Once Lost though.
No, it was.
It was.
They played that song. Remember the track you talked about with the guitar opening? It was
his
that.
Crucifixion.
Yeah.
I remember there was a show there specifically too where Converge played My Great Devastator. It was the only time I'd ever seen them play that song, and that was like the room erupted. It was just like, it was like them with like Alexis on Fire and HopeCon. I think HopeCon played. Yeah, that was a fucking awesome show.
That brief era of Converge is my favorite live shows I've ever seen them play. It was when they had that drummer from Virginia and they put out the split with Agoraphobic Nosebleed, and those songs came out. Those songs were unbelievably good. And I mean, I still like them today, but at that time, they played the most well-rounded set. They had caring and killing stuff. They had petitioning stuff. They had, what's the one after that?
Oh my God, do I have to go to my records now? It's When
Forever Comes Crashing.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, and songs from the Split as well, and they spanned everything. They were just awesome.
Yeah,
so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you play Locust Rain, I'm in. Sign me up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would go off for that or track 4 from When Forever Comes Crashing. This Time It's War Song. Concubine.
Yeah,
I think.
or a Conduit.
Not Concubine. Conduit. There we go. Yeah.
Which is it's strange for me because like I was really into grunge. Like still to this day, Pearl Jam is probably one of my favorite bands of all time, and I'm such a dork for that shit. But like my gateway into emo was really spawned from going to hardcore shows, and so which like even though like there was kind of this really weird roundabout way of getting there, but like. If I hadn't started going to hardcore shows first, like if I hadn't gone to the church and seen This Day Forward play, then I would have never, I don't know what the gateway would have been for me to like really dive into being like going to like VFW shows or like stuff at the First Unitarian Church or, anything like that. So, and then you'd go to these shows that would be like, we had a place called the Marlton VFW, which was like a really popular spot. And what was so awesome about the Northeast scene at that time, especially, was the mixed bills that you would get. So you'd have like, maybe a hardcore band or two, or like a heavier band, and then also like a super cool, like chill band, and then maybe something kind of like techie, mathy, indie stuff. Like it was never the same set of bands over and over and over again. You'd always have like a variety of different shit.
I really miss that aspect of shows. I wish that you could still see like Texas Is the Reason and Snapcase and like, I don't know, Cancer Conspiracy, like all on the same bill.
Yeah. There was a flyer being passed around here the other day. My friend Drew sent it to me. It was about something that was a show I'll actually think I have it on my phone right now. I'll pull it right up. But he played in the band Weekend Nachos. And he's been around the Chicago scene forever. And he sent me this Chicago Hardcore Festivals from December 1997. And the first day is By the Grace of God, Braid, Get Up Kids, Jimmy Eat World. And then the second day is All Out War, Mushmouth, No Reason, Brothers Keeper, Damnation AD, 25 to Life. And then the next day is Earth Mover, Harvest, Burn It Down, Extinction, Race Trader, and Culture. Wow. It's just like, what is this beautiful festival? This is insane. But yeah, so fucking cool. And I mean, I'm sure you've all seen that flyer that was like the one at CB's where it's like Spaz and Charles Bronson with like Braid and the Get Up Kids all happening in the same matinee. You're like, that used to happen. Like that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
But so we need to get back to that.
Yeah. So that, being like this, for all intents and purposes, generally somebody who's played in, majority like indie emo bands for most of their life, really I have just as much passion for, punk and hardcore. And so that's like, I think that's something only people from the Northeast really, really have. I haven't witnessed it as much out here.
Yeah, it must be a Northeast thing or a East Coast thing, because I had the same trajectory. I was really into grunge and hip hop, and then segued right into really abrasive metalcore, and that was all I listened to. And then somehow emo snuck in, and then that was all I listened to. And then post-rock after a number of years, and then that was all I listened to, and now it's all just mixed together.
And what's funny is like that had actually, like, I wound up playing in As We Grow, and I got to wound up being in Up Up Down Down for a while, and I wound up playing in these bands that meant a lot to me and still mean a lot to me. And so I was very fortunate in that regard. And I think it's just from, you could put the work in out in the Northeast and see return from it. And I think that was really eye-opening. And that's probably why I like, for example, like got my, I graduated high school and I got a money to go to college. Basically, what do they call that?
Scholarship.
Why was I fucking blanking on that? Sorry, I haven't had that much wine. Jesus Christ. So I got a scholarship, and I basically took my scholarship money and I bought a van with it. I told my parents, I was like, I'm not going to college, and they were like, what do you mean? I was like, I gotta do this thing instead. And and I was accepted to Drexel to do a music marketing course, which was actually run, I didn't find out until way later, which was run by Darren from Jade Tree. But so I got accepted for this program, and it came like up to the time when, we'd be considering, going to school. And I got a job working for a record distributor in South Jersey with, which was called Independent One Stop. It was also punkstop.com, which was the two names for it. So, which is actually run by this dude, Joe, who ran Hellbent Records, and this guy, Rich, who ran Knife or Death. And Rich is now a cop, so we won't talk about Rich. But, but Joe and Rich were like kind of it was like, well, I don't need to go to school. Like, I got the job doing the music marketing thing. Like, I'm just going to go do that instead. And that was just kind of my gateway into like getting even more ingrained with like what was happening in the North Jersey scene.
So how did you link up with Pat Troxel? Now he told some amazing stories on his episode, and with you guys in Funeral Bird, and you would just kind of roll up to shows even if you weren't playing and just play them. I think that was an amazing move.
I mean, we were the worst. I like seriously, like I look back on my teenage years, I don't know how we weren't getting our asses kicked all the time. Like, it was just like, we would say and do whatever we wanted. We would fucking just, like we would roll up on house parties. We would drive around South Philly in our friends, in my van. No, we would drive around South Philly in my van with all the fucking Funeral Bird gear in the back. And we would just wait until we saw a house party happening. And then Pat would walk out. Did he tell you this story? He would walk out of the van, knock on the door, and someone would answer the door. And he would go, "Oh yeah, we're the band."
And no, he didn't tell us that one.
And the people, whoever answered the door was usually never the person whose house it was, and so they would always be like, "Yeah, come on in." And so we would like load into a house, like a South Philly house party, with full stacks, and just like play our like 15-minute ridiculous set. And somehow everything would get destroyed, and then we would be like, "Cool, thanks," and then we would like load out all our shit and drive away. We were ruthless, and that was actually like a trick that the tricks that I had learned from the kind of Willow Grove crew were tricks that I carried for years, long after I had stopped playing in that band. It was like, you could go on an entire tour and not book a single show beforehand. You could just find out where other shows were happening and roll up and be like, "Oh, my show got canceled, and we found out about this one, and we only have like our set's only like 15, 20 minutes long. Is it cool if we like set up in front of another band and just play on the floor?" And 8 out of 10, they're always like, "Yeah, sure." Just load in, you can play first. You're like, "Okay," and then you roll in and play first. And we would start joke bands and do trips to places like, okay. So you may have seen that Hum just put out a new record, right?
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. Yep.
So in 2003, Hum did a reunion at Furnace Fest. It was like their first show in 15 years, I think, at that point. And so me and some friends, this dude Mike Howard, who you should probably also interview. He was in Funeral Bird also, but he also played in like Ladder Devils, and he was in Fight Amp for a really long time. And he's a tattoo artist now, but he's played in tons of different bands. He's just a great fucking drummer, really great guy. And so me, Howard, and our friend John started a band just to go to Furnace Fest and see Hum. And the idea was we would try to play like 3 shows down and 3 shows back, so we didn't really have to pay for our trip because we were so broke. Like I don't think any of us had jobs at that point. That was what like spawns bad ideas like this that you would have at like your local diner. And so we recorded a demo. We wrote like 6 songs. We recorded a demo using a boombox. So we played live and just recorded it into a boombox and then dubbed cassettes from the cassette we'd made with the boombox, and made art for the demos. We made buttons. I used to have a button machine, so we made buttons. And then we like screen printed shirts in my parents' kitchen. And we're like, cool. We found out about like 4 shows that were happening on the way down to Furnace Fest. We found out about a show happening in Birmingham, Alabama on the day of Furnace Fest. And we found out about 2 shows on the way back. And so we did that. We crashed every single one of them. And I think we wound up playing 6 shows in 10 days. One of them being the festival that was happening in Birmingham that was happening like coincidentally with Furnace Fest at the same time. And the fest was called Fuck Furnace Fest. And the reason that they were doing Fuck Furnace Fest, it was at it was at like the old Cave 9. It was at like the old all ages venue in Birmingham. And so we showed up and we were like, yeah, like we were supposed to play Furnace Fest, and we showed up and like we weren't allowed to play, and we heard that this was happening, and like fuck those guys, right? And everyone was like yeah, fuck those guys. You're like, yeah, we're like, we only our set's 12 minutes long. Like, can we? Is it cool if we like load in and play and like just help us like sell some merch for the show or whatever? And they were like, yeah, like actually one of the bands dropped, so you can totally like come in and play the set. So we roll in, we play our fucking shitty set, and then we we hang out for like 20 minutes. We sell like a few cassettes and a shirt, and we're like, okay, see you later. And we like left, loaded up our shit, and then drove right over to Furnace Fest.
Hilarious.
And we roll up to this section that was like the band section. And we're like, let's just see if this will work. So we like pull up to where like the band load-in area is, and we're like, yeah, we're in one of the bands. And the dude like pulls out his clipboard and he's like flipping through the pages. He's like, what's your name? And we said a name of another band that we knew was playing the festival. And he was like, all right, cool, yeah, you're good. And he's like pulled into like the band parking.
Wow.
And because we entered through that part of the festival, we didn't have to pay to get in. So we just walked into the main area, and then we just stood like in the center of the crowd, like nervous that we were going to get busted like the entire fucking time. But these were all tricks that were learned through the Willow Grove crew.
That's amazing. Did you get to see Hum?
We did. It was amazing. We saw Hum that day. We saw Hum, Cave-In, Hatebreed, Andrew WK.
Yes.
Who else did we see that day? Failure and
Wow.
It was wild. It was basically like the main day at Furnace Fest, and we saw that. We just stood and watched the main stage all day long. And so
that's incredible.
And the show was over, and we got in the van, and we just started driving home, and we played 2 more shows on the way home. Just like showed up, pulled the same shit. And I think
seems to be the recurring theme is like look at that. You don't even have a band, and you just create a band and just create a tour, and you just do it. Like I always get so hung up on like, oh, it's not the right band or the right time or everything's not perfect or this and that, but you just did it.
Yeah,
you created it out of nowhere.
You took imperfection and were like, no, I'm just going to fucking run with it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's wild? I have cassettes still and buttons still of this band. And if we were on video, I'd show them to you right now. The band was called Alabama. And the joke was that because the show, we had to go to Alabama. And it came up we were at the diner making jokes about what we were going to do and how we were going to pull this off. And somebody who was at the table, I think it was our friend Jenny, she was like, I can't believe we're going to go to Alabama. And we're like, well, there's the name of the band right there. So
that's beautiful. I like that the fest was named Fuck Furnace Fest too, because I used to do party promotions in Philly, like DJ parties and stuff.
Yeah.
And my idea was to create parties, but just call them fuck, like the big parties, like fuck making time and fuck hands and knees. But I never went through with it.
Dude, I haven't heard making time and hands and knees in probably 15 years.
Yeah. When did you move to Chicago, and why did you move to Chicago?
So, in 2003, this is a really great story, actually. It's 2003, I graduated high school. And at that point, I had joined a band with playing upright bass because there was a post on Centrifuge about...
Yes.
I could imagine you haven't done a single one of these interviews without Centrifuge getting mentioned. But
well, this is the first time. Wait, Centrifuge may have been mentioned on the show actually, but I am an alumni. Tommy is not, but you know.
Yeah, I had a computer back then, but I just didn't get it. And it was so funny. The dude who ran Centrifuge ate lunch next to me every single day. Like I was like friendly with him and everything, and I was just like, I just didn't get it, and it was like it seemed to be just this whole place where just drama happened. I was I'm gonna go skateboard. Fuck this.
It was awful. I'm sure I almost got my ass kicked a dozen or so times from that fucking website, and of my own making. I did say fucking. Well, generally, I would like stick up for people who are getting fucking like railed on by like any prominent Philly crew person at any given moment, and then I'd fucking be like wanted for months, and then it would
I stopped posting for years because one day I was a loudmouth on the internet and I couldn't back it up, obviously. So one day I'm there mixing it up and like just posting to some guy and he's getting mad, and then my friend messages me. She's like, "Hey, that's so and so," and I was like, so I disappeared for like 3 years. So I'm glad I didn't post in the heyday of centrifuge, because I definitely would have gotten my ass kicked.
Well, so separate from the ass kicking part, I found someone had made a post. This dude Jeff Ravazio had made a post. He was in a band or starting a band and wanted an upright bass player. And I'd actually played upright bass all throughout high school and into my late teens and early 20s. And so
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, I own an upright bass. Like, I would love to join a band playing upright bass. That'd be a lot of fun. And so the band was actually me, this dude Jeff, this dude Matt, and this dude Shane. And Shane McCauley was a renowned Philly photographer. He had shot the cover of of a bunch of stuff that he'd shot the covers of a bunch of things that were on J-Tree. Most notably is the Kid Dynamite cover where they're all wearing the football helmets that say punk across the front.
Yes.
So he shot the photos for that. He was like an old R5 person that, had existed in the scene for a long time, old screamo dude. And we really hit it off. And he was like 10 or 11 years older than me. So we kind of had this like older brother, younger brother vibe. And so, at one point, it was the summertime and he wanted to go to Chicago. He wanted to try to take like a weekend trip in his car out to Chicago. And so he was trying to find people who would be willing to go. So he, didn't have to drive the whole way there and back by himself. And so the trip wound up being me, Shane, Sean Agnew, and this dude, Kurt, who worked for R5. And so they took me to Chicago for a weekend as a 18-year-old on this like wild Chicago R5 adventure. And so, they showed me around and I'm like this young, impressionable emo kid. And I like meet the Kinsellas and I'm like,
wow.
I like going to all these like cool restaurants and bars. And I couldn't get into the bars, but the person that we were there to see, her name was Andrea. I was a friend of Shane's and later became a friend of mine. She also wasn't drinking. So her and I would hang out and just like cruise the city while they would go and like party or whatever. But it wound up being this awesome weekend and I completely fell in love with the city. And so during the course of that trip, we met this dude, Brian. Brian played in the band Damage, but he was living in Chicago at the time. And Brian needed someone to sublet his apartment throughout the upcoming fall. And so I had just decided that I wasn't going to be going to college. And so took him up on that offer and lived in Chicago in his apartment, which is actually 2 blocks from my apartment now. But I lived there for about 4 or 5 months, while he was doing whatever he was doing. Mm-hmm. So I basically showed up, paid him all the money for the apartment up front, and then I just hung out there. And I basically went to the Fireside Bowl every night and like saw cool shows at the Fireside Bowl every day. And then, hung out with a couple friends that I'd made here. And then I think like November, like Thanksgiving, Christmas time happened, and then I went home. But ever since then, was like, I got to go back. So I had a couple relationships during that time in between. This was the difference of like 2003 to 2008. So I was back in Jersey, Philadelphia for like 4 or 5 years. And leading into when I started doing 52 Weeks, which was the first Into It Over It record, I'd started that on my birthday, which was September 27th, 2007, and made a commitment that like, if I can finish this entire project, I'm going to move to Chicago the second that it's done. And so sure enough, I was able to finish the project. And then it was like October 1st, 2008, moved to Chicago.
So that was 1 song a week, right? For the whole year.
Yeah. So I wrote.
Now, do you planned ahead of time? I'm going to do 1 song a week until it's done for the whole year.
So I called up Steve at Grabble and I was like, I have this idea. I was like, this is a fucking harebrained scheme and I need your help. And he was like, okay, hit me with it. And I was like, I need to book the studio every Wednesday for the next 52 weeks. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, I have this wild project. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it, but I really want to try to finish it. And sure enough, like once we dove in, it almost became like if I didn't the shame of having started it and not finishing it outweighed sometimes the desire to maybe not be working on it, because there was like the first 10 weeks were really hard. And then it hit this like super smooth, like week 11 to like week 40 was just like a breeze. It was just like, we dialed in this routine. We figured out which days we needed to like if I had somebody playing drums on it or something, like what days we would need to rehearse, or like, how I needed to plan my week. So I had like lyrical content, because you had to like actually go do stuff also, or else there wouldn't be anything to sing about. So like,
Right.
there had to be a level of like social life, work to pay for it. And then, cause I had a job during the whole time. So I'd work, during the day. And, let me back up. Are you familiar with the Leonardo da Vinci sleep cycle?
No.
Oh, I think I've heard of this. Is this like the 2 hours on? Like it's like you like work for like 2 hours, and then you like have like a cat nap, and then you work for 2 hours, that kind of thing, right?
So
Tesla did it. Tesla did it.
It's called polyphasic sleep. I actually just had to Google it while I was on with you. So basically, what I would do is I would work. I would wake up at like the latest time that I could wake up and still get to work on time. So it was like 8 a.m. Wake up, drink a coffee, get in my car, drive to work from 9 to 5, come home, sleep from 6 to 8, wake up, eat dinner, and then either start working on the song or go out. Then I would come home I would go back to bed at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then start my day all over again. So I would actually have like 2 big sleep breaks during the day that were about 3 to 4 hours each, and then be on for the 8 hours in between. So I did basically polyphasic sleep for a year while still going out and or working on music. And was every Wednesday we would get together, we would record for like, we only had 3 hours to record and mix whatever we were doing that week. So a lot of what you're hearing on 52 Weeks is the first take. It is the only take. Like we basically were like, good enough, and just moved on. So, I re-recorded, this one song, Anchor's been re-recorded a bunch, but there was another song called 22 Syllables, which we re-recorded a couple years ago. And like the re-recording of it is so much better, but like there's some real charm to just like how much we were able to do in a few hours. And some of those songs I look back on and I'm like, how the fuck did we do that? And it would be like me with a drummer. We'd play everything one take to play the whole song. Then I would be like, okay, roll me on another track. And then I would play all the second guitar in a single take. And then I'd be like, okay. And then I'd unplug the guitar and plug the bass into the same amp. And I'd be like, okay, now run me again. And I'd play all the bass. And then I'd unplug, and then I'd like turn to my left, and there'd be a vocal mic set up, and I would just sing into the vocal mic. Like, that would be it. And then, that was basically the whole process for a year. But so we finished that. And then, at that point I'd had nothing holding me to Philly or Jersey anymore. And,
How old were you at that time?
It was my 23rd year. So,
wow. So I respect the drive, because when I was 23, my only focus was like getting fucked up as often as I could, like whenever I could. So, just to be that young and to be able to be that focused on something you love, I think is awesome.
Well, I didn't start drinking until I was 23.
Ah,
wow.
See, that helps.
Yeah. So I was actually, I was straight edge until I'd actually broke edge at my mom and dad's 40th wedding anniversary. And they'd poured champagne, and that was me breaking edge was having champagne at that anniversary.
How was it?
It's fine. It's like, it's fizzy grape juice.
Yeah.
And for a while I was like, when I first started, and I don't know if you guys ever were straight edge ever. I kind of almost assume like if you were into hardcore and you went to shows in the early 2000s, you were straight edge for at least 15 minutes at some point.
Yeah.
And so, when I broke edge finally, it was like I'd never had a sip of alcohol my entire life at that point. And I was like, I'm only going to drink like the best shit. Like I'm only going to have like the nicest beers. Like I waited all this time. If I'm going to drink, I'm going to do it right. And for a while I really did that. And then like cut to me, a year and a half in, and it was like, you know what? Miller Lite is actually like what I want.
Yeah. Everybody makes that curve. Like I went through, like I only drink craft beer and Grey Goose, and then it's like you get down to like, all right, I'm just drinking Coors Banquet out of the can I left on my nightstand, like that. Now I was not straight edge in the early days. I never was straight edge like in early hardcore, and I just dabbled in whatever. But I became straight edge later in life out of necessity, because I used to have some problems, let's say that. But everything's under control now.
Yeah, I mean, these days it's like I you know what? And actually, I've gone through bouts of quitting drinking as well. I mean, I think like beer in general doesn't really do me a whole lot of favors. it's, I usually either am gaining weight or having headaches all the time, or,
Yeah.
just shitty. During quarantine, I've actually gotten a wine subscription, which I highly recommend.
Ooh.
I highly recommend. It's like if you have the bougie capability in order to do it, it's definitely a lot of fun. But the second quarantine's over, I'm going to cancel that shit. And I actually discovered my relationship with weed not too long ago. Like maybe like
Oh, really?
like probably like 2015 was when I like actually decided or like realized how much I enjoy the recreational effects of marijuana. And that's been a game changer in terms of just like not being hungover and not gaining weight and just feeling better about myself. And, and I'm not like, I'll maybe get stoned like once or twice a week, but it's like, now that it's legal here in Chicago too, it's made it a whole lot easier. And
it's legal there now too.
yeah, it's recreationally legal here.
When writing 52 weeks, did you ever slack and then you had to like jam 2 songs into a week?
No. And there actually wasn't anything written in advance. So
Oh, wow.
the only song on the entire thing that had a little bit of extra lead time was the first one. And then from there, everything is written literally that week, which,
Wow.
and that's what's so interesting about songwriting in general. It's like anything else, it's a muscle. So like the more you're doing it, the better you get at it and the more natural it feels.
Yes.
And like the more you begin to realize like, oh, like not every single song needs to be like this grandiose statement. Like you can maybe just say what you need to in like 30 or 40 seconds, which some of those songs are maybe only like a minute and 20 seconds long, but some of them are 5 minutes long. So it's like there's it definitely that's what I mean about that sweet spot in the middle. It like kind of hit this stride around week 11, and that carried me through most of the project. And then I got to like week 40 and it was like, okay, let's just be done with this. So like, typically I recommend when people listen to that project, I'm like, listen to the first disc. Like the first disc is way better. The beginning of disc 2, like if you have the CD, the beginning of disc 2 is pretty good. And then it's just like, once you get to like 45 though, like it's over.
I think that's the album the first album of yours I heard, and yeah, I found my favorites and I stuck with those. And it's amazing how many people were in the scene and around that just we didn't even know and like we didn't interact. And I first became aware of you, Evan, when the band Everyone Everywhere had their record release show at KFN.
Yeah. What a good show.
Yeah, for the first LP, and you opened that, right?
Yeah, well, honestly, this kind of harkens back to the fucking Funeral Bird thing, but I kind of like jumped on that one last minute.
Yeah, because you just played acoustic, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like I happened to be in town, and they found out, and they were like, "Oh, do you want to play?" And it was like there was no plan for me to play. Like it wasn't like an official thing. It just wound up working out. At least that's how I remember it. I don't remember it being so official.
And I absolutely loved that band. So I was looking forward to that show. And I remember seeing you at the show, and you had a Quicksand shirt on, and I was like, hey, nice shirt.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was a nice shirt. What happened to that shirt? I actually don't even know what the fuck happened to that. Really, the band that carried me through the Northeast stuff, though, like generally was like the touchstone for that era of my life was The Progress. That was really like the band that we had, that I kind of identify with that chapter in my life. And, even Into It Over It, like Into It Over It really never was like it was never like a Jersey thing, even though it started there. Like it always just felt a little detached. And like by the time it actually started like picking up steam and becoming a real project, I'd already planted my feet here. So I've attached a lot of Chicago to what Into It Over It's become. And in terms of like Jersey and Philadelphia, like the Progress always kind of remains that staple. Up, down, down too.
Yeah. So how did you end up back in Chicago?
Yeah, I was in Chicago for that fall. And then, once 52 weeks was over, me and my partner at the time just basically packed up our car and moved out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you find it difficult to get integrated with the music scene there? Because when I moved to New York in 2012, I had all these fantasies of like, I'm going to get involved in the scene and I'm really going to start doing more bands and all this stuff. And I was in some bands, but it just balancing work and all this stuff. It just, I don't know. It didn't become as big of a thing as I had in my mind. So how was it for you getting integrated out there?
What happened was I'd actually got here. I got here it was October, and 52 Weeks wound up coming out on CD officially the following June. So June 2009. And so when I first landed here, yeah, like I wasn't really integrated at all. I'd had a few friends that I'd met before I'd gotten here, and me and my partner at the time were kind of like just getting integrated and kind of feeling out the city. But when I did move here, I was already playing bass for a band. Like I had just joined another band. So the idea was that I would, 52 Weeks was wrapping up. This band that I had just joined needed a bass player that were like old friends of the Progresses. There's this band called Demira, which they were on Equal Vision, and it was like, and they were old buddies. It was kind of like, okay, cool. I'm going to join this band and I'm going to play bass, and that's going to be my ticket into like becoming a full-time touring musician, because they just toured so hard, and that was the thing that I really wanted to do. And I wasn't getting that out of the Progress. I wasn't going to do that with Into It Over It. Like I was like, cool, this is a band that's already established. They've got a booking agent. They've got a label, this, that, and the other thing. So I joined the band, and immediately after joining the band, the booking agent drops them and the label drops them.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay, well, I just fucking signed up for this shit. And I just had the band all move to Chicago with me. They were like, okay, cool. Like we could all use a change. So like, let's move to Chicago. So we move out to Chicago, and I'm playing in this other band. And, and we were kind of like meeting some people. I was meeting people through being in Demira, because Dave, who was the singer in that band, was like, to Dave's credit, he really puts in a lot of legwork. He's always on, and so was meeting people through that, but hadn't really like defined my own shit at all. And did a bunch of touring with them. Into It Over It was like sort of happening concurrently. Like I played a record release show in Chicago with Everyone Everywhere. Actually, it was like Everyone Everywhere needed to play a show in Chicago. I needed to put a record release show together. So like the two of us played together at this place called Reggie's, and Bob Nana played too. It was a really good show actually. But so
Nice.
Played a record release show, but I wasn't taking Into It Over very seriously. And then one day, Demir had kind of been home, and we were trying to work on new material, and it wasn't really going that hot. And I'd kind of gotten into like a little bit of a skirmish with Dave. We were like disagreeing about some songwriting decisions, and there was a band meeting that was called. And so I go downtown for this band meeting. We're having this band meeting at fucking Intelligentsia Coffee. It was like downtown Chicago. And if you ever show up to a meeting, and everyone who's and the meeting time is like, say for example, like you're meeting at 8:00, and you show up at 8:00, and everyone you're meeting with is already there, know that
it's about you.
Yeah, it's something bad's about to happen.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I walk in, and I don't even sit down, and I'm like, you guys are about to ask me to leave the band, aren't you? And they were like, well, like, sit down. And we're like, okay. And I'm like, so we had this kind of fucking back and forth diatribe about why I'm being asked to leave. And essentially it was basically like, it was being positioned to us that we all had this creative input to the band. So, with that being the position, I took that liberty of being like, okay, cool. I'm going to speak up about stuff that I like or don't like. And because I did that, I was asked to leave. So it was like, okay, and so I actually leave that meeting. And I text my friend, and I was like, hey man, like, kind of bumming, like what's going on? And he's like, oh, I'm at this show. I'm at the show at this house. You should come to this house show. It's in Logan Square. It's at this place called Summer Camp. And I'm like, okay. So I take the Blue Line train from the meeting where I was just asked to leave Demira to the Logan Square Blue Line. I walk over to this house show, and it was this band Native and this band Castavet.
No, now Castavet are incredible. Tommy and I are huge fans of them.
Dude.
Yeah.
So that was, I walk down into the basement. That's my first like DIY Chicago experience.
Wow.
And at that show, I met Nick, who wound up being the drummer for Into It Over It for like, he was the singer in Castavet, but he wound up being the drummer of Into It Over It for like 4 or 5 years. And that meeting was like the touchstone meeting of me becoming like integrated with the Chicago music scene.
Well, and that's incredible that it happened like right after the breakup meeting with the band. And it's funny. I had one of those meetings before. I was in a 3-piece band here in New York, and I booked us a show, and like you, I was pretty outspoken, and I was getting us gigs, and I had ideas, and I'm like, guys, are we going to practice? Like the show's coming up. And they're like, let's meet to talk about the practice. And I was like, here we go. So I show up, and they're both late. So the guys kicking me out of the band showed up late. And one of the guys showed up like way later than the other. So I'm like, the band's over, right? The band's over. Yeah. And he's like, well, let's wait for the other guy. Other guy shows up. Like, he's like, I'm like, is it done? He's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. So I just got up and like cleared my shit out and left.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a waste of time.
You don't need to belabor this. Like, just tell me the truth.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not mad. When they kicked me out too, I was like, I wasn't mad. It was like, it was literally like the first thought in my head was, oh, okay, cool. Now I'll just do Into It Over It now. Like,
Yeah.
like there wasn't like a, it wasn't a bummer. I mean, it was a bummer that like, I felt like, I was kind of misled in terms of what my contribution could be creatively, and like maybe not trusted creatively. But like at the same time, it was just like, okay, like, well, there's a silver lining here, I'm not gonna lose sight of that. And so, go to that. Then and this goes back to the conversation from like the very beginning of this podcast interview. It's just like, some of the decisions that you make that could be just like the smallest little decision could lead to really big and amazing stuff. And so like,
yes,
if I didn't go to that show, would I have met this person who wound up being my like collaborative partner for half a decade? Like, you know what I mean? Like if I hadn't been asked to leave that band, would that like course of events have gone so much differently in any other like alternate scenario? And so sometimes it's worth taking those chances or just doing that like random thing to see what will happen or what will come from it. And sometimes those results are really good and sometimes those results are really bad, and that's just kind of like the messiness of life, right? Like that's,
oh yeah. You never know what to expect.
Ever.
And that's why nowadays I take more risks. Not like risks, but I don't know. I try a lot of different stuff because you never know like what cool things you can discover.
Yeah, you're like licking door handles. You're
throwing myself in front of cars to see if they stop. It's just you got to live, damn it. Now you were in a band with members of Castavet. Stay Ahead of the Weather, right?
So yeah, so actually that so Nick was always that guy. He was the drummer on the Split with Everyone Everywhere. He's the drummer on the Stay Ahead record. He's the drummer on the Koji Split. He's the drummer on Proper. He's the drummer on the Owen Split. He's the drummer on Intersections. But he was the singer and guitar player in Castavet. So yeah, Stay Ahead wound up being this project that came out of, I'd gotten asked to do the split with my friend Koji and wrote 5 songs that were that wound up being the Stay Ahead songs. But I wrote these 5 songs with Nick and was like, I think this is going to be my side of the split. And then we kind of thought about it a little more. And we talked about it a little more. Like these songs are kind of like maybe too aggressive for a split with Koji. Like his stuff's more like singer-songwriter, and these are like kind of like upbeat, like punk songs. And there was some back and forth about what we could do with them. Because at that point I'd written these songs, but Nick and I hadn't started working on them yet. So I'd like showed up and was like, I have all these riffs. Like, check this out. Like, this would be really cool. And the more we talked about it, we're like, these kind of seem like their own thing. So we basically started a band because we had these songs that didn't make sense for this one split record. And at the time I was working at this place, I was working for Threadless. Do you remember Threadless?
No, it sounds familiar. What is that?
Threadless was like OG internet. Like it was like basically it was like a crowdsourcing graphic t-shirt website where you say you were like a graphic designer and you had this really good idea for a shirt. Maybe it was like a pun joke or like just something like a really pretty shirt design or something like that. And you could submit your shirt design to this website, and then the user base of the website would vote on the t-shirt designs, and whatever got the highest votes would actually get produced as a shirt. And so, and this is like also such a rando thing because the dude who I was working at this place called The Alley. The Alley was like Hot Topic, but like a fucking small business version of Hot Topic. So like imagine like not a brand that's in every single mall, but it's basically the same fucking thing. It sold like creepers and like fucking Cramps t-shirts and like, like a punk store of Chicago, right? So like I got a job there. That was like my first job when I moved to Chicago. And the only reason I got that job was a connection through someone the job I'd had previously in New Jersey. It was basically like a way for me to have something to do once I showed up here. And they were cool. They were cool with me going on tour. So like when you're young and just want to tour full time, you're like, any job that'll let me go on tour and come home and still have a job, like cool for me, so work there, get asked to leave Demira. So I'm not touring anymore. And then at that point I'm like, I can't fucking stand this job anymore. I need to find something else. So I play that record release show in June and I meet this kid named Matt. Matt and I wind up becoming really, really close friends. Matt gets me the job at Threadless. I start working at Threadless with Matt. Nick and I are concurrently working on these songs. Matt's a really good guitar player. I asked Matt to play guitar. Matt joined Stay Ahead of the Weather. We rope in our buddy Bobby, who was a native. Bobby plays bass. So it was me, Bobby, Matt, and Nick. We record the Stay Ahead songs the same week that we did the Koji Split songs. So those are the same recording session. If you listen to both of those records, it's exactly the same. Then Bobby decides to leave the band. We bring in our friend Owen. Owen was in a band called Numenon. Owen became the bass player after that. And we recorded like one other song. We did like one short tour, and that was all Stay Ahead ever did. But from there, Matt became like a really good friend of mine. We started producing records for other bands. So we produced 2 records for You Blew It. We did a record for Signals Midwest. We did a record for this band Annabelle. And then years later, when Donald Trump wins the election and I need a job again, Matt was like employee number 5 at Reverb. Matt gets me my job at Reverb.
Wow.
And then Matt was the engineer on the new Into It Over record that's about to come out. Him and I, we basically built a studio here, and we made me, him, and my friend Adam made that whole record together. Adam's the new drummer. So this person that I'd met on this like off chance at this record release show becomes one of my longest friends, who's helped me. Like, I've brought tons of recording jobs to him, and he's actually given me 2 literal jobs to me.
That's incredible. Yeah, you never know what the connections you make, where they're going to bring you. And there was this big New Year's Eve show in Philly at the Fire. I think it was like 2010. I think it was maybe Into It Over It, Stay Ahead of the Weather, Everyone Everywhere, a bunch of other bands I don't remember.
World Is played, maybe High Tide Hotel.
Yeah.
That show was bananas.
Oh, Castavet played too.
Oh, that's what the tour was. It was Castavet Stay Ahead. That was the tour. So so that would have been the 2 of us, Everyone Everywhere. I think maybe World Is, and it was definitely a 5-band bill. Way too many bands.
Yeah, no, but I wanted to see every band, or at least 4 of them. It was my dream show at the time. Just every band was awesome, and I'm glad I got to see Castavet at least once. Are those guys? Are they defunct now? Are they doing anything?
That was they had. And this is just, I don't know the inner workings of how that band totally fell apart, but they'd had another LP written. And during some of the last shows where I'd gotten to see them, they were playing all of those new songs. And the new songs were like fucking punishing. They were so good. And they never got recorded. And it's just like this, it's this like local Chicago myth, like tragedy, that some people got to see it. And, but at that point, like, and I'm sure you've seen this too, like when you have a band that's like your favorite band and you can tell that things are like coming to an end and that people aren't like getting along, like the magic isn't there the same way that it was. Like there's maybe like inner turmoil between band members, and like you could tell that like something was wrong. Like it didn't have the same like magic quality to it, because there were Castavet shows that I saw that were some of the most like magical live show experiences I had ever seen. There was a show we played together in Lincoln, Nebraska, in this house called the Ghost House, which was run by my friend Vic. And they do their whole set. They hit the last note of the set. It's like literally the last fucking note. And all of the power blows on the very last note. So they hit this fucking huge, like cathartic note, and all the lights blow out in the basement. It's like the most insane fucking thing I've ever seen. Like, how did it like build? Like the power just couldn't take it. Like the one more note. It was like literally on beat. And then like shows where they play in Chicago in like loft spaces here, and the police would be outside and they'd shut off all the lights in the house, but the band would keep playing. So you'd be watching the band and it would just be like illuminated by police lights while this band's playing in the dark. It's just like,
that's awesome.
The coolest shit. Like just this magical band. And once the magic was gone, it was challenging, and it was a bummer to like see that record never get made, because those songs were super fucking good.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen in Castavet, if you happen to hear this, We are big fans, and we implore you to somehow one day record those tunes so we can hear them.
And I actually work with Ron and Will. They both work at Reverb too.
Oh, good.
That's awesome.
So you can tell them to listen to this episode.
I already relayed the message to them dozens of times. It's like, can't y'all just figure it out? Like, like, just.
I have an idea. I'm gonna get them all on the show. It'll be a panel thing, and I'll work through it with them.
I mean, even before, like, Nick and I haven't spoken in a really long time, but even before then, I was like, yo, I will put up the money to just see that record get made. Like, if y'all can just hang out for 3 days and just do this thing, I will pay for it. Just please do it. And that offer still stands. And Nick and I haven't talked in like probably 4 or 5 years at this point.
Wow.
Like I will pay for it to this day. Like, just get together, figure it out.
Yeah, I really hope it happens one day. Now, you toured, Into It Over It toured with one of my all-time favorite bands, Texas Is the Reason, for their reunion shows. Mm-hmm. Now, I am a super fan of Texas Is the Reason, so tell us how that came together and some of your experiences.
They did a series of reunion shows in the United States. Mm-hmm. They had some East Coast stuff, some kind of like Midwest fly-in stuff, and then some West Coast stuff. And for the East and West Coast, it was Title Fight and I want to say Touche Amore, but it was like they wanted to get young bands in to do these shows, and so they'd pick these 2 bands that could do like the local coasts or like the coast shows, and then they needed somebody who could fly in to do the other stuff. And at the time, Norm was a mutual friend with my management, I believe. I actually don't even remember necessarily how it came together, but it was very easy for me to fly in and do these random shows. And I'd actually had played a bunch of shows with Garrett at that point, or had like done stuff with Garrett. And so, cause he was touring solo at the time, or no, actually I had done shows with Atlantic Pacific.
Yes.
And so I played shows with Atlantic Pacific because we were both on No Sleep and our records had both come out right around the same time. So I met Garrett and John. Mm-hmm. John Herguth, who was in, he was like a friend and played a bunch of other bands with those, like that kind of crew. And so, so I'd met Garrett, and that was kind of my in with that gang. They needed someone who could do these fly-in dates. It was like Toronto, fucking Atlanta, and like somewhere else. So there was like 3 like really weird US markets. And so it was very easy for me to just join and with a guitar and just fucking fly around with them and open solo for their shows. And so I did those 3 shows, and then they were going to Europe, and they asked me to open their European tour. And so I got to play what was at the time supposed to be the very last show, which was at the Electric Ballroom in London. And I remember seeing that show and being like, this is the fucking greatest shit. And I remember saying to them, I was like, if you ever do another show, you have to invite me. Like, I can't, like, you can't say this is the last show. And then like, oh, I'd be so bummed if you played another one. And then,
the John Bunch Memorial.
Yeah, they played the John Bunch show. And so it was like, of course you got to play that, right? Like, absolutely, you got to play that. And I was like, now, like, you have to play another show so I can open that show and then play the very last show. Yeah. But so, Norm and I still talk, and Scott owns this fucking awesome restaurant out in Portland, which my girlfriend and I were fortunate enough to eat at before quarantine hit. It was like last November, December. It's a place called Farm Spirit. And so he's doing his thing out in Portland, and Norm's doing his thing in New York, and and it's like they're the best, man. Like, I had nothing but great times hanging out with them. It was nothing but a good vibe. It's awesome kind of being around, because I was touring solo, and so I would travel with them. It wasn't like I was like, in my own van or in my own car doing my thing and then like meeting up with them. I was like in their van with them. So I'm like witnessing that dynamic, and the dynamic for the 4 of them, I feel like, is just, you can tell that they are best friends who don't see each other all the time.
Yeah.
So they like bicker and like kind of give each other a hard time, but you can tell that they just have like a fucking blast when they're with each other. So it was super cool, kind of like getting just to see how much they love each other as a crew of people, and just kind of experience that alongside them, or like just as like a fly on the wall, and
That must have been that would be a dream come true for me because like Texas is the reason. You've also played with Get Up Kids, Mineral. Like these are bands that like shaped my youth. These were the bands I listened to when I was heartbroken and going through first experiences and everything. And so it must be so great to be able to play with them and to meet them and interact with them and everything.
For a while, I kind of gained this reputation of being like this fucking, like if any old emo band was going to reunite, that I would have to be the band that would open the shows. Yeah, it became this like running joke, and it wasn't of my making. Like I wasn't going after these tours. Like it wasn't like I was like. I mean, of course, I'm happy to do it. I love all these fucking bands, so it's like it was awesome for me, you know, like, and for whoever was playing in the band at the time, because we were all fucking huge fans. But yeah, it became being this thing like where like people were like dragging me on the internet because like I, you know, oh, so and so's reuniting. I guess Into It Over. I got to see Into It Over again. You know, like all this shit. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, they're asking me to play. What am I going to say? No. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like you want to make fun of me for opening for all of the absolute legends.
This is like,
go right ahead.
I didn't ask. Like they can ask whoever they want. What the fuck? But I did kind of get this like stigma. Like Into It Over kind of became the band that was like the go-to band for any of that shit. Because like,
you know what I used to say? I would be like, oh, Evan is like the Todd Glass of emo reunions, because you know how Todd Glass opens like every big comedian show.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully there haven't been any. You know, there was only one band that we didn't really get out of like the crew of legendary emo bands, and that was Cap and Jazz. I never got to open for Cap and Jazz. That was like that was the one I really wanted to. You know, because we got Christie Front Drive, we got Mineral, we got Get Up Kids, we got. I didn't get Boys Life either. I guess that was the other one.
You could still get Cap and Jazz. You've got an in with those dudes, right?
Totally. But Mike's not. I don't think Mike's ever going to do that band again. But I don't know. Don't put me on the record for that. I don't know what the deal is ultimately.
Now, can you share why? We love salacious details.
No. I'm not opening up the gossip.
I had to try.
But I think the peak of it all was, and this is not meant to be bragging, but I think like I will never open for another emo band again because I've achieved the emo status, like the ultimate emo status, which is that I got to play bass for American football.
Oh wow.
Really? So, now, when did this happen?
So Nate had his first son, and it was January of 2017. And so there were two shows that got booked that were around the time that like Nate was supposed to have his firstborn. And there was like it was kind of up in the air. Like, would Nate be able to make the shows? Would Nate be able to play? At the time, you know, American Football and I were both managed by the same person. That person was basically like, hey, Evan could fill in on the duties. He could learn the songs. He's already very familiar with the catalog. You know, he's a bass player, you know, like this would be a easy parlay, so you don't have to cancel these shows because Nate's having a child. So initially it was supposed to be New York at Terminal 5, and I like fly in New York. I like do a couple radio shows as the bass player with American Football, which is like the most surreal shit ever. And then we fucking get to the Terminal 5 to do the load in, and Nate just shows up and he's like, hey, I'm here. And we're like, what? Like, what the fuck? Because he lives in New York. So he's like, yeah, I'm ready to play. He's like, all's good. And they were like, well, we don't want, like, Evan's already here. Like, he learned all the shit. He's like playing the stuff. And so before the show at Terminal 5, I learned how to play all of the additional guitar parts that were on all the other songs. So at Terminal 5, like with like 2 hours worth of rehearsal time, I'm playing third guitar on stage with American Football. And then 2 weeks later, they were playing in London, and that was the show that Nate actually couldn't do. But yeah, so that was my emo peak. I can't come down from that.
Now I gotta ask, how do you learn all the songs like just before the show? Do you know them all? So it's just a matter of like figuring out where on the guitar it is, and then you can play it, or is it, you know? Because like I know every Texas is the Reason song. I know them. So if you show me where it's at on the guitar, I can do it. But like, how do you learn it all? Do you just have enough of that muscle memory that you can learn it real quick?
I knew the tunings. I'm very familiar with open tunings, thankfully, because of so much of like what Up did and what Progress did and what Into It Over's done. The show is at Shepherd's Bush actually, and there's a video of it, which I can send you after this. But it was from February 12th, 2017. But so yeah, I mean, I basically was just listening to the recordings, kind of getting some intel from Steve and from Mike, who play guitar, and getting some clues into what to do, and then also just kind of like making shit up.
Yeah.
like knowing kind of like what key the song is in, and like maybe writing a part or two around it. But there were also like parts where I didn't play guitar at all, and I would just like sing harmonies or do shaker or anything that the songs would call for, because really there's so much happening in all that material that there's plenty of room to add textures and stuff like that. It was basically just a way for me to figure out something to do during that show. But yeah, after that, I please, I'm asking you, don't invite my band to open for your old emo band anymore. I've done it.
You're done.
Done. Like at this point, I'm the old emo band, and now I got to get young emo bands to open for me. I got to pick like one band as like the new version of what I was maybe in the early 2010s.
That's good. That's good. You got to pay it forward. And yeah, that's we've talked about this on the show. That's a recurring nightmare I have, where it's like I'm at the show and the band is like, we're on in 20 minutes. You got to learn the songs. You got to do it. And I'm like,
Yeah,
how am I going to do it? But you did it.
And then all of a sudden your pants are gone, and like, like your mouth just like falls away from your face, like that weird, like your teeth fall out, like,
I hate that.
That is what a fucking weirdly profound, like, that's one of those times where you're just like in the middle of it. Like, I've woken up from dreams being like, I had to have known that was a dream. Why are my teeth always falling out? It's seemingly like I have ones where like I wake up, and I as soon as I wake up, I'm like, oh my God, it happened again. It's the fucking same exact thing, dude. What the fuck? Like, am I this dumb that I'm falling for it every single time?
Nowadays, I usually just dream about whatever I was doing right before I went to bed. Like I dream about, like, it usually involves like Call of Duty or Final Fantasy VII Remake or something like that.
And I mean, the work dreams are my least favorite. Those are the ones where it's like fucking A. Especially now, it's like worse than usual, because it's like all you do, like you're beginning. I don't know about you guys, but I'm beginning to associate work with home. And so now it's definitely been a little bit of a challenge trying to like separate it, and at 5 o'clock, like having to just be like, I'm done, and turning my shit off, not answering emails anymore, like setting those boundaries mentally, because otherwise I'll be like laying awake thinking about it. Meanwhile, like Al, my girlfriend, is just like fast asleep, and so I'm laying awake, like staring at the ceiling, thinking about every mistake I've ever made for the last 20 years. And, she's like,
I love that. Yeah. So, Evan, we have a new Into It Over It record that's coming out soon, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Cool. Yeah. So stopped. The record's called Figure, and it's coming out in September. Officially coming out in September. It'll be out on Triple Crown in the United States. It'll be out in a label called Big Scary Monsters in the UK, and a label called Stiff Slack in Japan. And I haven't made a record, new material I haven't released any new songs since 2016 as Into It Over It, and basically just needed some time to step away. Essentially, like the short version of the story, and this is still like a long version of the story, is that, we were on this super long tour during the Trump election, during the election, the election. And we were in Berlin watching Trump win in Berlin. And I think that was kind of a wake up call to all of us who were, at the time, like 31. Like I was 31 or 32. Josh, the two Joshes who were playing in the band at the time, were both around the same age. Rodrigo was a little bit older. But Josh on that trip announced that he was going to be departing the band shortly after that election. And, and I think it all kind of sent, separate from him announcing his departure, I think we were all kind of feeling like, oh, fuck, like we're in our 30s now. We're living beyond our means. We have to come home and find new ways of income whenever we come back. None of us have health insurance. Like all of us, like the earth is about to change very drastically, and we need to be somewhat prepared. And so we kind of came home and took a break. And during that time, I went through a very rapid succession of changes. Like I'd come home, needed to find a job. Thankfully, very, very fortunate. Thankfully, Matt, we discussed this. Matt helped me get my in with Reverb. We started working there. But shortly after that, my partner and I of 8 years broke up, which was completely of my making. It was my mistake, my fault. And so, it was a very big signal to just kind of like, I have to just like step back completely and really reevaluate, why I'm doing the things I'm doing, why I'm making the choices that I'm making, why, how I treat people, how I talk to people, how I interact, how I conduct myself, how I conduct this band, how I conduct, really everything. And so it just didn't feel, Pet Symmetry was like somewhat active during 2017. And, we were a little busy, but like, it really wasn't like full-time busy the way that Into It Over was. And it was definitely me beginning to discover how much healthier my life could be, or how healthy I could be, not being a full-time touring musician anymore. And so, I wasn't sure if I was going to make this record. And, at the time of Josh's departure, which was totally amicable, like he's still one of my best friends. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. Him and I were kind of like grooming who would be the next person to take the place of him. Cause at this point it would be like this is like, now I'm on like drummer number 6 or 7 at this point. So, so we, there's this guy named Adam Beck, who, is an audio engineer here in the city of Chicago. I'd worked with him on the last You Blew It record that we worked together on. And Adam's a phenomenal fucking drummer, great fucking human being. And, the very last full band show Into It Over played was, we did like proper and full at the Metro. It was like January 12th or something like that of 2017. That was the very last full band Into It Over show. And so, we played the show, and Adam's band opened the show. And him and I were watching Adam play, and I was like, man, I really think like Adam might be the dude, and like Josh and I were kind of talking about it, and he was like, yeah, like I think Adam's the right choice too. No one would know better than Josh. And so, Adam and I started talking, and, initially I wasn't sure if I wanted to work on new material, but like him and I started getting together, and Adam was, to his credit, was really like, he was really motivating. He's like, let's get together. He kind of put the pressure on me in order to like make it happen. And so, against my, not against my will, but definitely like, he pushed me to a place where I maybe wasn't totally comfortable, but also I think where I needed to be. And him and I started working on new material, and it just felt really natural and really fluid. And we spent a really long time we wrote about 30 songs, and picked our favorite 12, which we thought fit really well together on a record. And last year started recording it. We spent about 7 months on the recording, and brought in all these different collaborative forces from around the city, like different engineers. And my friend Andrew did like some synth stuff, and my friend Lynette, who did the art, and, really brought the city together, or at least like resources that we had in the city together to like make it what it was. And, and I haven't done anything in so long. It's like, it kind of feels like, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, like the feeling of being in a band again for the first time is a really irreplicable feeling. It's not a feeling you can get often, and to try to recapture it can feel really difficult to do. And, and like, we'd mentioned previously on this interview, it's just like feeling like I'd gotten to a point with Into It Over where I was very close to beginning to resent it, and kind of backed off right before I pulled the plug right before it got to that point, where I'd feel like I, was doing things because I had to and not because I wanted to. And so now I'm at a point with it where the relationship is so much healthier, and I can do things because I want to do them, and because I think they're fun and exciting to do, but not because I have to. I don't have to be on the road 6 to 11 months a year. I don't have to be playing a show in fucking Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And no slander in Oklahoma City, but it's like, I don't want to fucking, I don't need to be in Boise, Idaho, maybe ever again. It's just like, I don't, and so like, and I love these plays, and I love playing, and I love performing, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, I'm not mentally and physically built for that anymore. And so, And so being able to do it the way that I want to, being able to do it the way that works for me and feels healthy for me, and do it in a way that feels really positive and productive is much, much better. And that's kind of what this record's about. It's about, like mental recovery, a little bit of reckoning in there, and, and just about improvement, general personal improvement, which
That's great. Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's the last 3 years have been that for me as well. A lot of introspection, a lot of self-improvement, because my life, which I've talked about a little bit on here, my life used to be completely out of control. Like just
Out of hand, dude.
yes,
Like not fun.
Tommy can tell you about that some other time, but just
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Like,
really,
yeah, man,
I've really only started growing up over these last 3 years, and it's been a real struggle, a lot of pain, a lot of rejection. But I'm starting to feel like an adult and taking responsibility of my own life. And the band I was in 2 years ago, I think, a lot of the songs on that EP are about that, just the struggles and getting my shit together. And when I write, it tends to be about loss and struggles and whatever's going on at the time in my life in terms of like loss and struggles. That tends to be where my writing comes from. But how about for you, Evan?
I mean, yeah, it's really. I mean, this record specifically, like I've never really written a breakup record before, and that's ultimately what this wound up becoming. It's just basically like it's less about that specific situation, but more so about that year of redefining my place and where I am and where I feel, how I feel about where I am. And so it kind of covers like pretty much the entirety of 2017, and and for me, it's interesting to think about looking forward, because I haven't written anything since then. There's plenty of leftover material, but I haven't written lyrics yet for As Into It Over It, which like, I kind of segment myself mentally based on the band that I'm writing lyrics for. So like Pet Symmetry, for example, we've been working on that record, and I'm writing lyrics for that band, but that band is a little bit more, it's a little bit more playful. It's like it's not coming from the same like very direct and honest and confrontational place that Into It Over It would come from. So, like if I'm working on Into It Over material, I'm going to be singing about the deepest, darkest shit that's happening in my brain. Whereas like if I'm writing lyrics for Pet Symmetry, I'm kind of trying to keep it a little more surface level, a little more lighthearted, maybe a little sillier, so we haven't really written lyrics for new Into It Over stuff yet. So I'm kind of curious what's going to happen when we start doing that, because we have a whole nother record's worth of stuff kind of like ready to start working on right away. And so, but then again, I'm also just interested to see how this record is perceived. I haven't done anything in a really long time, and I think the songs are my strongest, and I'm really proud of the thing that we made without having to like do shit like thinking about how big our record budget was or like who produced it, because like, I feel like I used to get so hung up on that shit. Like, like you gotta find somebody who's like, the cool producer. And it's like, yeah, that's really cool. Like it is cool to like work with some of these people that made records that were really important to you. But like, also like, it's also cool to just like build your own fucking studio and do it yourself. Like that's also really cool. So like, I used to get hung up on some really surface level kind of like, I think, just some really like surface level shit. And I don't feel that way anymore. And I feel like the stuff that I've done, that's the best stuff that I've done, is the stuff where we have just been able to take control of it and own it. And just trust ourselves, and so I'm really excited for people to start hearing these songs. It's been a long time coming. We've been writing them since May of 2017. And, and some of these songs at this point are like 2 or 3 years old. Like the record's been mastered since November. So it's been done since 2019. It's just been like waiting to go. And like, it was originally supposed to come out now. It was like supposed to be out now. And, when everything with COVID kind of hit, it was like, that kind of became impossible. So we moved it to September. So, now it's just kind of this like nervous, anxious feeling of like what it's going to be like to put out new material again. And I hope it goes really well. I mean, if 5 people dig it, cool. And if 500 people dig it, cool. And if, whatever. At this point, it's like,
Yeah, I've been in that situation where you're waiting. Like the EP I recorded, we recorded it in September, and my friend who was mastering it, he's like, "Yeah, I can get it done. I think in October or November." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like we have to do it now, no." So I can't imagine like sitting on a record for like years, like
Oh, yeah.
just waiting for it to come out.
It's been done, and like and you know, like people have heard it. A lot of friends have heard it. A lot of you know, I definitely shopped it. Which also, like, shopping a record is the weirdest experience ever, and
Yeah.
you know, which is so wild because Triple Crown, who done the last two Into It Ever records, like they're doing this one too, and that was kind of always my hope, was that they would do it, and you know, and it definitely felt natural that that would happen. I mean, the only reason why they wouldn't have is because like my contract had expired. You know, like I'd already fulfilled it. So like,
Yeah.
but what's great about this one is, you know, I paid for everything. I paid for all of the making of this, so we own it, and that's what's really great, is that you know, Adam and I own the masters, and we can do whatever the fuck we want with it, and
That's awesome.
like I get to work with Fred, Fred at Triple Crown, on like a very mutual respect basis, and like he's working on this because he really likes working with me, and I'm working on this with him because I really like working with him, and that's a much healthier relationship. Not even to say that our relationship was unhealthy before, but it's like when you know you're coming to a project from a mutual place of respect, that is like such a great foundation to work from. You know, like
Yeah.
the trust there is just really, really unmatched.
And you're on Triple Crown, so you're label mates with Caspian. That's good company.
Yeah, I'm also label mates with E-Town Concrete.
All right, now
Yes. Yeah.
that is I'm going to say this right now, hoping that it somehow gets willed into existence. Caspian, Into It, Over It, and E-Town Concrete all in one bill.
I would play
True.
that in a heartbeat.
I would kill to see that.
And it's got to be at Club Chrome in fucking South Amboy, New Jersey.
South Amboy.
Oh
yeah.
my god, I'd be there in a minute. It would be so good. We love E-Town.
I was, dude, at least once every other month, Keith and I will just send each other randomly a link to the song Mandibles by fucking E-Town, because we just think it's a great song, first of all, and it's fucking hilarious. The video is
so
fucking
mean.
so funny.
Oh, it's
I'll admit, I kind of liked it ironically a little bit at first, but I genuinely love them now. They're awesome.
Yeah, the guy who plays drums in E-Town, it was really funny. It was when I was looking at the comments on that song. This was months ago. One of the comments was like a kid going, "Yeah, the guy who played drums in this band is the principal of my high school," and it's not like one random kid. Like it's got like 15 likes, and like everybody's like, "Oh yeah, Mr. So and So fucking rules." It's like hilarious. That's what that guy does for a living now.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's the thing, man. Every fucking weird old hardcore guy has like some normal ass life now, and they got a fucking they're just like secret punks. You know, they wear their button up collared shirt. Like it's the same shit. Like, you know, I've had friends who get their tattoos on their necks and their hands, and they're like, you know, they talk about getting tattooed. I'm like, I would never get fucking tattooed on my necks and my hands. You know, like those are fucking life ruiners, man. You can't get that shit. And like, they're like, what do you mean? And it's like, you want to be able to have like you want to be able to wear the collared shirt with the long sleeves and have no one know that you're punk until they see the little like glimpse of the tattoo, sneak right out from the underneath the sleeve, you know, then they know like something's up to that.
Yeah, I have a couple, and I can cover it up with the long sleeves easily. But when we go out to a work outing, like I'm dressed like all in black, and if I'm wearing like a short sleeve shirt, I have like tattoos. I'm like, oh man, I hope everyone doesn't think I'm insane. Well, I used to be, so it's all good, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about other cool label mates, it'd be Death Threat, E-Town. Hang on a second. Mushmouth. That was another Triple Crown band.
It was funny when I saw Triple Crown was putting out like Caspian and you guys, and I was like, wait, is this the same Triple Crown that 25 to Life was on? I went and looked at the website. I'm like, holy shit, it is.
Yeah, it is. Scarhead, Shockwave, all that shit. Disciple AD. But so you know what's also fucking full circle is that Triple Crown put out Outsmarting Simon in the early 2000s. I don't know if you remember that band. They were like a New Brunswick band.
I remember them because their singer ended up becoming the new singer for Marigold, right?
Yeah, PJ. So PJ, who is in Outsmarting Simon, he's who put out the very first Progress EP on his label Maroon Set. We had met them because the Progress had played with Outsmarting Simon at a VFW in Bucks County. And we gave them like our shitty CDR, like homemade CDR. And then PJ hit us up on email like a week later. It was like, I want to put this out like actually. And, like, I don't know if I would have ever had any trajectory without PJ Bond and the kind of full circle of Triple Crown being a part of that. It's like so wild.
Well, see, it's a small community. I mean, if you're in it, you know at least somebody.
Yeah.
Now we've got the new Into It Over It record coming out in September, right?
Yeah.
What else do we have on the horizon?
Well, so Pet Symmetry is making a record right now. We've been tossing around some album names, but we haven't landed on a specific one yet. But my favorite one so far is 2021, A Personal Space Odyssey.
That's clever. I like that.
That's my favorite.
Gotta be it.
That's my favorite one so far. I think that'll wind up being. It'll definitely be a song name for sure. Please don't steal that if you hear this podcast.
Oh no,
yeah.
I do.
Yeah, so we're working on that. There's been writing again, which is great. We have like a whole kind of a full length worth of music written, at least. So I don't know if we'll start recording that soon, but and then I started a new band, like I'd mentioned. I'm not going to say any information about that yet, but that's been something we've been working on during the entirety of quarantine so far. So basically since March, and that's getting to a place where we're getting ready to start mixing that record. So hopefully that'll come out early next year. Which is, it's pretty cool. It's actually like a departure from anything I've done before. And there's actually like barely little to no guitar on it, which is awesome. I'm actually like trying to figure out how to be a better, like piano and synth player. And
oh, nice.
I've never really focused on that before. And so this has been a nice excuse to kind of like teach myself how to be a little more effective on keys, which is like a thing I've never really done. But it's been totally a studio project at this point. I don't know if there'd be live shows ever, but the songs are super cool, and it's been a really fun distraction from the reality of life happening right now. And then, I imagine by the time this comes out, the Into It Over record will be announced. Pre-orders are probably live, and I'll have done. So at this point, I'll have put out you guys are getting kind of a first glimpse at this, but I'll be releasing a flexi single on the 6th. That's the beginning of the release for this, so we're time traveling now on the podcast, but I'm releasing a secret flexi that has no song name, no information. The artwork that comes with it, I've made assembled completely by hand using the elements from the book that are parts of the art from the actual record layout. Ooh. And I'm basically for $5 shipped. I will send you a flexi in the mail with some hand numbered attachments to it. So that'll be the first announcement. The song hits the 10th with the pre-order. This goes live the 13th. So you're hearing this well after the album pre-order has gone online. So you go to Triple Crown's website and pre-order a record about being a better human being, and that's really sad that maybe you'll listen to and cry. Hear about my personal recovery on your turntable.
Hey man, that we love getting into that on this show because we've all done some bad shit, we've all lived through some bad shit, and we're continually trying to improve. So it's
good.
No. I always try to like minimize that. I teach math. I'm a 6th grade teacher for a living. So there have been definitely times afterwards I'm like, Keith, you got to get rid of that one part where I forgot because a lot of times, especially if we have our like people that we grew up with, we start telling stories about when we're like 15, 16 years old, and I'm like, fuck, that was so dumb. Like we should never have mentioned this. Actually, Evan, I wanted to mention this. This is something that I stumbled upon there probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it was somebody. I think it was just because of the YouTube algorithm. It got suggested to me, but it was your first show at 572 Cuthbert Boulevard. Do you know? Like it was at Reckless Records in Chicago.
That was our first show. It was Reckless. 572 Cuthbert is a song. Actually,
that's
the address,
song name. Okay.
The address of 572 Cuthbert is, just to give you a glimpse, is the Crystal Lake Diner in Haddon Heights, New Jersey. That is the address of 572 Cuthbert Avenue. And that song that song is about going to the Crystal Lake Diner with an old friend.
It's
So
it's just such a beautifully like the song has this amazing guitar riff that opens. The drum section is so great, and it starts out with just you sing. You're actually not playing at first, like it's just your vocals.
Yeah.
It is one of my favorite songs. I continually, when I make new playlists, I'm like, I'm putting that on there.
Oh,
like,
thanks, man.
I love it so much. It's just such a great song. I just wish once in a while, like it dawns on me, like I'll be talking to Keith. I'm like, all right, who's coming on? And he'll be like, oh, it's Evan from Into It Over It. And then I'll start like looking, and I'll go, oh fuck, that's the dude from There. Like, it takes me a minute to like really put all because like especially with someone like you that's been in so many great bands, like it's so hard to like piece all these things together. We've had people on before where I'm like talking about stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, we ended a 2-hour interview, and like we didn't even mention X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, oh my god,
I mean, I'm actually
up, like
honestly, I'm straight up surprised we haven't talked more about the Northeast.
You know what?
Really
The Northeast is just a jumping off point, because whenever I'm
Precisely.
booking guests, like they'll be like, "Oh, but I'm not from the Northeast. Is that okay?" And I'm like, "Of course." Like it just it just started as like us talking about our local scene, but we're global at this point. We had Signal Hill on last week, and one of those guys lives in the UK. We've been talking to people in California, Texas, all over the place.
Hell yeah.
except for Boise, Idaho. You said that place sucks, so fuck
No. Let's correct that. I never said Boise sucks. I just don't need to go there again.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Fair enough.
Tommy said it sucks. So people from our listeners from Boise, if you have a problem, Tommy's email is T. No, I'm just.
I actually really like Boise, Idaho. It's actually a safe haven in that long drive between fucking Salt Lake and Seattle. But it's it's just like those long drives. Like to do a Midwest tour, you have to do you're in Kansas City, right? And that's like the last like 5-hour drive you do. And then from Kansas City to Denver is 11 hours. And then from Denver to Salt Lake City is another 11 hours. And then from Salt Lake to fucking Boise is like 8, and then from Boise to Seattle is like 5 or 6 or 7, depending how bad the snow is. And so like then you'll do Seattle, maybe Vancouver, but you'll do Seattle and then probably Portland, which is like 3 hours away, and then Portland to San Francisco is another 12 hours. So like if you're touring the West Coast, you are just driving constantly, like non fucking stop, and then that will destroy all the good in the world by the time you get to San Francisco. And then you play San Francisco, which will be awesome. San Francisco is great, but then you have 9 hours from San Francisco to LA.
Oof.
So it's just like
I have a hard enough time driving down the shore with my kids in the car.
Yeah, 40,
I can't do. I can't fucking do that. I'm like, Jesus Christ, are they gonna stop talking? Oh my god.
What's your shore? What's your Jersey shore?
So I have gone to Sea Isle City, New Jersey since I was in first grade.
I'm a North Wildwood man, so I'm wild.
Oh, you party?
Oh,
yeah, you're going to Wildwood. You're party.
Yeah. That's like Levittown part 2, bro.
Dude, yeah. I'm Ocean City all day. Ocean City, Jersey.
Oh yeah,
nice.
But we always drive to Ocean City to go to the boardwalk.
Yes, it's good, clean fun, man. Good, clean fun.
That's a fucking great place. And Wildwoods Boardwalk is
the best.
If you go early, that's the thing is if you go early in the night, it's really great. Like it's such a nice place and it's so fun. But like the later it gets, the more out of hand it gets.
It's because Wildwood's not a dry town, so it gets a little ratchet. Like later on.
Yeah, it gets a little wild.
Ocean City's completely dry, so like you can get your fucking Core Brothers. You get your Mac and Mancos, you fucking cruise the Gillian's Island, you play a little mini golf, and then you go down
a little putt. Fuck.
Oh yeah, dude. Well, so I am going to. I've kind of loosely hinted at this with the band, but I am going to repress the Progress stuff on vinyl for the first time.
Ooh!
Oh, nice.
And so that is a thing that we have. For a long time, we couldn't do because we didn't own the rights to everything. We owned the rights. Kenny, who did Watch the City Burn. Our second EP came out on Watch the City Burn, which was what the fuck was Kenny's band?
Kenny from Passion?
Correct.
Yeah. I only know that because of Centrifuge.
Yeah, so Kenny from Passion with his friend Chris started a record label called Watch the City Burn. Watch the City Burn did the second Progress EP, which was actually supposed to be a split with Halfway to Holland, and then Halfway to Holland broke up.
Oh.
And
Wow.
so those Halfway to Holland songs that were going to be the B side of that split are now available because they've made their discography available. But that was originally what that record was supposed to be. And then we finally got the rights back to Merit, which was our full length that was on Negative Progression. We finally got the rights back to that last year. So I'm going to put out vinyl versions of Merit and Golden State and see if anybody cares. And if people care, that's awesome. And if people don't, I'll have 300 records sitting in my apartment. But I'm gonna make sure that happens. We have a really great we have a pressing plant in town actually that's in the same building where we made the new Into It Over record, and
Nice.
they're called Smash Plastic. It's a local Chicago printing press that's doing vinyl pressings here. It's this dude John who works for Chirp Radio, and just trying to keep everything in the family here in Chicago. But looking forward to finally giving that the release that it's due. And I would hope that with that we'll eventually play another show in the Philadelphia area, which it's been, I think the last time we played in the Philly area was like 2013. We reunited for a show with the Wonder Years, and then we also did a show at the Boot and Saddle. It was like actually like an actual Progress show, and which is so funny because like we never were that good. Like we were playing better at the reunion than we ever did when we were actually a band. We sucked so bad when we were actually a band.
Now everyone's got some more experience, so you
That's what
can.
I'm saying. We're all like older, and like everyone's got kids, and we're all the pressure is off, and it's funny how much better your band can get, or how much better creative outlets can be when you're not so stressed out about how good you wish it was. Like once you can.
That's
you can-
one of the benefits of getting older, I think, is shit doesn't matter as much. Like, oh no, this is my part, or it has to be like this, or we have to tour, or we have to make it. You can just kind of do it and have it be what it is and have more fun.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, if you're having fun, that's what's going to make it great. And I mean, that also being said, like music's a young person's game, and it's like, and I'm completely aware of how fortunate I've been, and how fortunate I continue to be, just being able to make records and like fucking bullshit with the two of you guys and just talk shit about punk and hardcore from the Northeast and just about what we're up to now. And this has been a lot of fun. I've been having a blast chatting with you guys today.
Awesome. Well, Evan, I just want to say thank you so much for being on. We're really looking forward to the new material. And Tommy, some closing words?
I got nothing.
Nothing.
My man's got
No,
what's your okay? Let me ask you guys some questions. Let me give you
Yeah,
a
go.
rundown.
Yeah, please. We love this.
So, favorite cheesesteak in the tri-state area?
Pat's, the original, baby.
Pat's. You're a Pat's man?
Yeah.
All right. So I did recently. When was the last time you went?
2008, 19, I think, early 2019.
So check this shit out. I ordered. I'm a gymsman.
Now I like gyms.
yeah.
People talk shit about gyms, but I like it.
Who talks shit about gyms?
Who's talking shit about gyms? Straight up. But first of all, before I go into my next part, did you know that you can order gym steaks online and they get delivered? You can put them in your oven.
Really?
Oh yeah, don't they like they put them with like the dry ice and ship them, right?
Yeah, dude. So I ordered.
Yeah,
Me and a
yeah.
friend who I work with, a buddy. His name's Eric. He's from North Jersey as well. He's from like New Brunswick area, and so we split an order of 8 steaks. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a big.
But
I like Steve's Princess Steaks on the Boulevard.
Got it. All right.
I like that.
All right. Now
Yeah, they
separate-
have one in Center City now too. I tried it, but I didn't love it. I'm
All
gonna
right, so-
say.
Or they got one in Levittown.
So follow up question: what's your favorite sandwich in the city of Philadelphia?
Ooh.
I would have to say now. I know it's a chain, but I love Primo's. I love it. Primo's is
Yeah.
awesome, and there's a South Philly deli called Cosme's or Cosime's or something like that.
Yeah.
They're really really good as well.
So I tell you,
Okay.
Tommy hit me. With
I'm a
it.
big I'm a big cart food guy. I like halal carts. I like anything like that. But sandwich wise, I'm gonna have to go with. I like that Tony Luke's with the roast pork with the broccoli rabe. Yeah.
My
It's
man.
very
Oh, did I
good.
win? Did
My
I
man.
win? All right, fuck yeah.
My man.
All right.
That's
It's over.
That's not my answer, but that's an acceptable
Okay.
answer.
All right, phenomenal.
But mine straight up, Denix and Reading Terminal. It's my fucking shit. That is the sandwich I dream of all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh, I had
With the
that for the
shape.
first time.
Yeah.
I think it was when we recorded the podcast or somewhere around that. I stayed in the hotel right next to Reading Terminal and I went there.
Yep.
It was incredible.
Dude, the roast
Yeah,
the
that's-
roast pork with the fucking broccoli rabe and the sharp provolone. It is like
Yeah.
out of this fucking world.
There's no sandwiches anywhere in the country like Philly. Like you can't get a hoagie in New York
Anywhere.
City.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
and
Really?
you know what? New York actually, well, first of all, fuck you, because dude, the one piece of culture that's missing in the Chicago area, and I'll take this to my fucking grave, is the bodega culture. There is no deli bodega culture in Chicago, which fucking is the thing that I wish existed constantly. Because you're right, there's no good hoagie.
Yeah.
We got one spot. It's a place called Bari, which is like an Italian grocery store. It has a deli in the back, and
Mhm.
it's fine, but it is not the same. And
No.
at least in New York, you have the bodega culture where you can get a sandwich at any hour of the night.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I live on it. Like I've only recently discovered, because I'll be at my girlfriend's house and she'll cook actual meals on plates and everything. I've only recently been reintroduced into that culture. Like everything was just a sandwich and a little tin of Pringles and like whatever cool drinks I can grab out of the fridge, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
I mean, like if that's we have a grocery right around the corner from here. It's called Food Smart. It's the shit. It's like a all nights, 24 hours. They have like, a bunch of vegan, gluten-free. I'm not vegan or gluten-free, but they have vegan and gluten-free options. They got like all sorts of snacks. They got a crazy beer selection, crazy wine selection, a bunch of different ice creams and shit. And the only thing they're missing, they even have a 24-hour post office inside. The only thing they're missing is the deli counter. And if Food Smart had the deli counter, it would be the greatest fucking place on the planet Earth. I would just hang out there all day long. Just get a bacon, egg, and cheese or an Italian sub on a fucking Omarosa. I'd be fucking psyched. It only took 2 hours of us doing this interview for my Jersey accent to come out.
Oh, I love it. But yeah, the neighborhood I used to live in Brooklyn, when I still drank, the liquor store would be open till like 11. You could buy beer 24 hours. It's a 24-hour city, and I loved it.
I'm glad you're safe. My sister lives out in Ridgewood.
Yeah.
And,
Okay,
so
yeah.
I've been up to date, like with what's been happening in New York through my sis. But
I've been keeping limited contact, only with people I need to. Very limited socializing, hand sanitizing, wipe down the groceries, wear a mask, all that stuff. You got to,
Yeah.
No one wants to get this thing.
no, not at all. I already think I had it. Did you have it already?
I had some weird sickness in November. I don't know if it was the virus. It might have just been a cold. I'm not sure. But I didn't lose any sense of smell, and I didn't have any trouble breathing. So, maybe it wasn't the virus.
Tommy, what do you think? You have it already?
Oh no, for sure. No, not at all. Because when I was 16, I fell skateboarding on a handrail and I ruptured my spleen. So my immune system is pretty fucked as it is. So if I were to get it, I don't think it would be. It would be something I would be acutely aware of.
Ruptured your spleen?
Yeah. So I was skating down in Philly, and I was skating this handrail, and I tried backside lip slide on it. I lost control of the board, and I went right from standing up on top of the rail to falling. Like the board shot out from under me, and I landed on my ribs on the side, but I landed more towards my back. Like in between where like that soft spot where your ribs stop and your hip bone starts.
Yeah.
I kind of smashed that area right there. And the nice part is about when you rupture your spleen, it actually has like a protective membrane around it. So
The nice part.
well, yeah. So I didn't
upside.
I didn't bleed out in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
So I got back on the like I knew I was really hurt, but I wasn't like I didn't know how bad I was. But I got back on the train. I went home, and I walked in the door. And I remember telling my mom something like, I don't really feel well. And she was like, well, let me see what happened. I was like, well, I hit my side, and I lifted up my shirt, and it was like purple.
Ooh.
Like my whole stomach area was purple. And she was like, and my mom's not a nice, like my mom worked in a prison for a really long time. So
My mom is not a
my
nice
mom's
lady.
she's a harsh person. I love her, and she does she literally will do anything for me, but she really calmly and quietly, like, she picked up her keys and her purse, and she was like, I want you to go sit in the front seat of my car. I was like, okay. And just like being a 16-year-old, I was like, all right, my mom's telling me to get in the car. Like, I'll go get in the car. I was like, all right. So I just sat in the car, and she drove me right to the emergency room. And when I got in there, I remember the nurse said something to the effect of, please, please, please don't get up, because she had just taken my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was 60/40. And she's like, I'm pretty sure you're bleeding out. She's like, so we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to call in one of the surgical teams. They're going to come in and do an evaluation very quickly. And I was like, okay. And I remember, I don't exactly, my recollection of this is kind of like hazy, but I do remember the way my mom tells the story is, the nurse said, don't stand up. Like, whatever you do, don't stand up. And I was like, okay. But right before she left the room, she was writing something down really quickly while she was on the phone, and she was trying to whisper into the phone. She didn't want me to hear what she was saying. And so as soon as she got up, I tried to lean over to see what she was writing. And that's the last thing. That's the last thing I remember. So I woke up, and it was really funny as the nurse came in to see me, and she was like, hey, and I was like, oh, hi, I remember you. I was in intensive care for 3 days, and then I was in the regular recovery for another 3. But she came to see me in intensive care, and she was like, hey, you owe me a new phone. I was like, I'm sorry? She's like, apparently when I fell down, I reached to kind of like, get my balance, and I fucking grabbed her phone and ripped it right out of the wall and knocked everything off the desk.
Wow.
Spilled her coffee. Like, I fucked the whole room up, and it was just like, because they brought me in, it was like the emergency room where they put you in that little it was like the little side room where like they just do triage. So she was just doing like a really basic analysis, and she was like, let me just get your vitals real fast, sweetie, don't stand up. And then I fucking ruined the whole thing. So yeah, so if I had, the original question is, if I'd had COVID or been exposed to it, I'm pretty sure I would have gotten it, and you would have. I would not be here talking to you about it right now.
God, I'm so sorry to be laughing at your spleen injury.
No, dude.
We have to
And
keep
it's
you
hilarious.
safe. The show must go on.
I mean, dude,
it's hilarious.
I don't have anything comparable to that. I've been so fucking lucky. I've never like fucking really hurt myself ever. But the only comparable thing I can possibly bring to this conversation in terms of just talking about funny things happening at a doctor's office is I had to get my wisdom teeth pulled one time. Mm-hmm. And my Aunt Joan is she's a dental hygienist, and so being an uninsured punker, I was able to fucking go to her dental office and get dental care done when I was having dental issues. And so I needed to get a wisdom tooth pulled, and they gave me the gas and the Novocaine. And
wow.
And I remember I just went on this fucking tangent, like just high as balls in the fucking dentist office about which Black Flag singer was the best. And I was like, it's fucking Chavo. You tell me you listen to Jealous Again and you don't think he's the best singer, like, you're fucking crazy. And they, like, the whole office came in to watch me just like vent about Black Flag while they ripped a tooth out of my mouth while I was wide awake.
Wow. Oh my God.
That's the closest thing I have. I wish I had some crazy story about just like ruining an entire office in a single shot.
No, it's really funny because like I've met other people that have gone like, oh yeah, no, I had my spleen out, or I had I guess people get enlarged spleens when you get mono. Like, so if you have like a really severe case of mono, sometimes they'll actually remove your spleen because it becomes so enlarged that it can rupture. So I've met people that have that. Here's the thing. If you're already in the hospital and they don't have to do emergency surgery, they go in like laparoscopically now. So it's like a 2 to 3 inch incision. They opened me up from literally my sternum to under my belly button. So
Wow.
the next month and a half to 2 months, I had to, like, anytime I got up or moved, I had to keep a pillow across my stomach to brace my abdominal muscles because it hurt so bad. And the funny story, this is the last thing I'll say about it. So I was in a band with Anthony from Circa Survive. And
which one?
Anthony, so I was in the first band Anthony was ever in. It was called Audience of One.
I love that record. How are we not talking about Audience of One this whole time?
Oh, because it's about you, bro. I don't fucking talk about my stupid shit. So
the person that I moved to Chicago with was the person who Anthony asked to the senior prom, and she had told him no.
Oh my god!
It's my friend Steph Baum.
So he came to the hospital after I was out of intensive care and I could have visitors. He came to the hospital, and I remember my mom goes, Anthony's here to visit. And the girl I was dating at the time, this girl Heidi, Heidi and Anthony are here to visit you. And I was like, oh, okay. And Anthony had, from the lobby, I was in Holy Redeemer Hospital.
Yeah.
So it's like Meadowbrook area. So he had grabbed a copy of the city paper on his way in, and he proceeds to sit down and read from the personal ads in the back of the city paper, which are unbelievably explicit. And my mother's sitting there, and my mother's like a fucking like really like diehard, like crazy, like out of her mind Catholic. So he's sitting there like reading these things about like, I like to get dressed up in men's clothing and saying all this ridiculous shit, and I'm laughing so hard because one, they gave me the drip thing that you press the button for your pain medicine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this is how much of a junkie I am. Fucking the lady kept saying they put an IV, like the regular saline IV, in my left hand, and I kept taking the tape off of it, and I would tape the button down on my pain thing because it was it was like you could only press it every, they have it set on a timer, so you could only press it every certain number of things. So I kept waking up in like excruciating pain, having to press the button, and then be in excruciating pain for like another 15 or 20 minutes until it finally took effect, and I was like able to like, kind of fall back to sleep. So I was like, to sleep through the night, I kept ripping tape off of things. So finally I came in, I remember I woke up and all of my IVs were tied down with latex. So they had like put like latex bands around everything, so I couldn't tape my pain medicine anymore. But Anthony really like hurt my stomach because he had actually he made me laugh so hard, and I was unbelievably high, and he was I was cracking up. And the other part of the story, I forgot about this, is on the way home from the city, Anthony had called me, and I went to the Suburban Diner on Street Road.
Yeah.
And I met him, and I sat down next to him. I don't even remember who else was there, but I sat down next to him. And of course, in typical like old school style, like the way we are, I get in the fucking booth next to him, and the first thing he does is punches me in the stomach.
Oh yeah,
my God.
And I was like, motherfucker. I was like, dude, and I lifted up my shirt. I was like, I just got fucking hurt. My side hurts so bad. Why the fuck would you do that? And I remember being, I didn't even get my food because I had ordered, and I think I left $20 on the table. I was like, I gotta go home, dude. My stomach hurts so bad. Thanks a lot, Dick. And he felt so bad that when he came to visit me a few days later, when he was allowed to visit me, he brought the city paper and made me fucking laugh so hard. Oh, fucking
dude! It's making me wonder. Like, is mono a thing of the past?
I don't know. It's got to still be around, right?
I mean, I had it in high school, and I was with a crew of friends the other day because we were talking about like, everyone's talking about like sickness now because fucking COVID-19's happening. And it was just like
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, man, like I can't remember the last time I was that sick because like I felt like I got it in like right after Christmas because I was in New York actually, and like Al and I, my girlfriend and I, we've been traveling a lot, and I thought I had something in January that really felt like what the symptoms of COVID-19 were. And I was like, yeah, like I hadn't felt like anything like that since I had mono. And all my friends were like, mono? Like, yeah, I never had that shit. It's like, what? I thought everybody had mono. I thought it was like kind of like a rite of passage. Like you had to just like get it and get it over with, and then you don't get it again. But it's still like a thing that like just exists as a teen, But I have mono and pneumonia at the same time.
Oh my God.
And like I was like in like a freshman or sophomore in high school, and I was singing in a hardcore band at the time called Fall Stand Begin Again was the name of the band, and we played some show it was like a Westmont VFW show. It was like us and A Life Once Lost, and it's actually us, A Life Once Lost, This Day Forward, and David's Burning. If you remember that band.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah. And so, like we were just like the young band opening this fucking show, and I was like screaming with mono and pneumonia. Fucking band.
It's amazing what you'll subject yourself to when you're younger. Like now, if I have a cold, I'm like, I'm taking a week off. I need to rest.
Yeah.
Like I remember, if I had a cold or like a fever, I'd still go out and drink and like go to friends' houses. I'm like, oh, I have to go out. That just seems insane now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go to fucking like Sugar Moms or something and fucking have a Yingling and stand around and talk shit about the other people who are Sugar Moms having a Yingling?
Yeah, that's like serious 2006 style.
That's literally it. That's like what you would do. You're like, I gotta go to Sugar Moms. I gotta go to fucking North Third. I gotta go to.
Oh, dude, I miss the Northern Liberties bar crawl. Yeah.
Oh, dude, awful. And what was like the convenience store that had the really good beer selection there? It was like
Foodery.
Foodery. Oh, Foodery was great.
Yeah. Wow, this conversation's making me miss Philly now.
Oh, you should. It's making me miss Philly.
Well, all right. Well, we're over the 2-hour mark, so we're gonna.
Shit.
But this was awesome, and Evan, I just want to say thanks again for coming on. This was a lot of fun, and we're gonna look forward to all the new music. And Tommy, now some additional closing words from you.
Closing words. Shit, man. I don't know. You put me on the spot, bro. I don't fucking know. Be safe.
Yeah.
Be safe. Be nice to people.
Be
safe. Be nice to other people. Fucking try to help people out, man.
Yeah.
Fucking
Wear your fucking mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
just
treat people with respect.
Yeah.
And just be kind. Like
and if you live in my neighborhood, stop setting fireworks off at fucking like 2 o'clock in the morning.
What is up with the fireworks right now? They're straight up like it's. I've been reading like I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but like there is some like wild ass shit with these fireworks right now.
I'm reading those conspiracy theories, and I almost believe them because why would they just suddenly become a thing in every borough, like every night, all of a sudden,
in every major city? Like we have fireworks in Chicago, but they don't start till July 4th ever.
Yeah.
Like,
are fireworks legal in Chicago?
Not
like, can you go to like a fireworks store?
You got to drive to Indiana in order to get.
So here's the thing: in Pennsylvania, this is why I can explain it in my neighborhood at least. Like right by my house, like when you're leaving Ben Salem and getting on Route 1, there's a fucking place called I think it's called Fireworks King or something like that. It opened, so it's like a legit, like you can go buy like, a couple $1,000s worth of fucking mortars. But the thing is, it's like, I'm hearing fireworks. I'm actually not even hearing. There's a couple times where I heard them and I would go out and look and I would like see them. They're big fucking mortars. Yeah,
it's like those are professional grade fucking fireworks. Like legit.
And they're not, dude, those things are fucking not cheap.
Not cheap at all.
They're not little kids. Like, they're not fucking, like, 10-year-olds out there fucking with that stuff. Like, the 10-year-olds don't have $300 worth of fireworks. It's like, so, I don't know, but my dog is, like, freaking out every night. Like, every night she, like, runs into the room, and I'm like, what the hell was that? Because, like, we have a new baby, so I'm like, is that the baby? It's like, no, it's the dog.
Now, I grew up in Levittown, Pennsylvania, so I'm kind of immune to hearing fireworks. Because people in Levittown will set off fireworks for literally anything, any day, any occasion. There's just fireworks, so they don't really bother me.
After the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I heard fireworks for 5 days straight. Every night I heard fireworks.
Oh, dude!
Like,
I gotta real quick aside from the fireworks thing, as a Philly resident who moved to Chicago. I moved to Chicago October 2008. You guys remember what happened in December 2008?
Yep, Phillies
won
World
the World
Series.
Series.
Yeah, you know who fucking wasn't home for that shit? And then when the fucking Cubs were in the fucking Cubs and the Sox were in the playoffs like the following year, and then both fucking teams lost when they were both fucking projected to be the winners. I was also in Chicago when the fucking in 2003 when the foul ball fucking
that one they wouldn't have killed that kid over,
dude,
right?
yeah, he had to like move away. I was here for that shit. I've never been home for a Philly victory. I remember watching the Eagles win the Super Bowl and losing my fucking mind, and no one understood. I was like in a room full of people, like I'm the only one freaking out. And then also the only other thing that I will say before we close out this conversation is when the double doink happened with the Eagles and the Bears.
Oh yeah,
which was a fantastic evening with me and some friends out here. But yeah, well, I feel I am wearing my Phillies hat right now. You can't see it, but I'm wearing it. And even though I live here and I've lived here for a long time, I still bleed green and red and orange and
I love that. I still carry a lot of Philly pride up here. So folks, we want to thank you for joining us, for listening, and listen, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and give us 5-star reviews even if you don't like us, and write actual reviews for us. Apparently if you do these things, it really helps us out in the podcast world. So
and I want to know what your favorite sandwich is, your favorite Philly sandwich, because I too agree with the Primo's roast beef, a little extra spicy. That's definitely my move if I'm going to Primo's. But I want to know about your favorite Philly sandwich, and if you don't know, get a Jim's delivery on dry ice. It's actually pretty legit.
Jim's Steaks on South Street in Philly. And
fourth and
Tommy,
South.
Favorite cheesesteak before we leave. Go.
No, Steve Prince's Steaks is my favorite. That's like my go-to one if I'm in the area and I can grab it. But honestly, I just go to the pizza place down the street from my house. It's called Chico's. It's fucking phenomenal. It's on Philadelphia Avenue. It's amazing. It's fucking, I can walk there and their shit is just as good as any other place. That's the thing, is like people always go like, oh, Philly, you got to go to this place. You got to go. It's like any corner fucking pizza place that makes decent pizza usually makes a decent cheesesteak. Like you just got to fucking know how to season it.
The Philly suburb pizza places, a lot of them are really good.
That's how I feel about King of Pizza, Westmont, New Jersey, man. It's the same shit.
It's a good place.
Thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.